Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, character themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi, older sister and fantasy lore nerd.
And I'm Nicole, younger sister and romantic at heart.
And today is episode 8 of Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, where we're covering chapters 38 through 43. I really hope you're all ready for this extra jam-packed episode. This might be our longest episode to date. Who knows?
It's definitely our longest episode of Onyx Storm. Full stop.
But before we begin, please listen closely to our spoiler warning. Every episode has spoilers for the entire Empyrean series, including all of Onyx Storm, Iron Flame, and Fourth Wing, which means even though this episode 8 focuses on chapters 38 through 43, we are pulling in themes, lore, foreshadowing, and more from the entire book.
Listen. This is the Earids episode. The episode where the Earids arrive. They are coming around this town. So if you have not read the entire book, then we cannot stress this enough. Go finish Onyx Storm. I just spoiled a huge part for you, but we will be here when you're done.
Next, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
While the Zelna card game might have been PG, me defending sweet girl Andarna while her heart breaks will not be. So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Additionally, we are so excited to see you at upcoming live events. We will be featured guests at Enchanticon in St. Louis, Missouri, August 15th through 17th.
Then we will be at the Everflame Ball along with Penn Cole for the first ever Kindred's Curse Saga Ball on August 30th in Castle Rock, Colorado. Then we will be back at the Dragon Gauntlet in Boyne City, Michigan, September 12th through 13th.
Then Romantasy BookCon in Orlando, Florida from October 23rd through 25th.
Check out our website for more information to all of these events, as well as the links in the show notes.
Last thing before we jump into this Onyx Storm episode 8, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and want more events, more content, more community, and just so much more all around, please check out Fantasy Fan Club.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join. First, the Cadets, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, a book club, exclusive author interviews, trivia, community events, promo codes for live events, plus 20% off all merch. That is for $6 a month. Or you can join the Dragon Riders, which includes everything from the cadet level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, like this monster of a one you're probably reading right now if you're a Dragon Rider. Plus, you get special voting privileges. That is for $10 a month. And then we have the Iron Squad, which includes everything from the previous 2 tiers, plus behind-the-scenes content. At the time of us recording this, you got some wild behind-the-scenes from Lexi and I yesterday as we were doing this outline. You also get a welcome gift, giveaways, private Discord channel, and your name shouted out on the show. That is for $25 a month.
Join the party at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. The link is also in the show notes. And really and truly, friends, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for supporting us as we've turned this podcast into our livelihood. It's all because of you.
And now it is time to see what cards the God of Luck has drawn for us. Hopefully, we don't get slapped.
To start off every episode, Nicole does us the honor of summarizing what happens in the stretch of chapters. So listen up, because Battle Brief is in session for chapters 38 through 43 of Onyx Storm.
Starting with chapter 37, part 2. Welcome to Zelna. Here they aren't screaming, Firebringers! No, these islanders are waving like they're members of Dunder Mifflin in the Scranton commercial. Someone told them that dragons kill people for funsies, right? Touching down, something feels off though. This isle has magic! Chapter 37. Magic is back, baby! Well, kind of. Not enough to channel or shield, but the bonds are back, and with it, increasing tensions fade away for now. But enough about magic. Who's ready to play a game? The game is easy. Pick a card and you get a prize. I want to be on this game show. Who doesn't want a chance to win a bottle of wine, a super not broken compass, a rusty bucket, a new wardrobe, or even a kitty cat? Sounds fun, right, Traeger? Alexa, play You Give Love a Bad Name by Bon Jovi. Shot through the heart! Chapter 39. Another isle and still no sign of the Earids. After Ark successfully secured 40,000 troops, not too shabby, the Riot makes plans to pack up and leave the Isle of Luck, flying literally anywhere else, but specifically to an uninhabited minor isle to give Traeger and Scylla the funeral they deserve. But not before Xaden and Violet have a leadership heart-to-heart. Xaden reminds his defeated boo that she is is a brilliant fucking woman, and she is worthy of Terran, worthy of commanding their riot, worthy of protecting their people, worthy of sucking his not that one right now. Chapter 40. When dawn approaches, the riot takes flight, flying all day until they finally find land. And would you look at that? There's more magic here that can't possibly mean anything, right? But before the riot can even think about investigating, it's time to lay Silarain and Traeger Karis to rest. We commend their souls to Malik, and we're right back into searching for the Irids. But first, where the fuck are we? It doesn't really matter because it's not on the map. Broccoli could have told you that one. What's the best way to search all the surrounding minor isles? Divide and conquer, of course. But don't worry, Violet. Garrick will take great care of your honey bear. Violet tries to relax for one moment when Taryn interrupts her nap time. Opening her eyes, it appears that no one is there. Wait, did the sand just move? They didn't find the Irids. The Irids found them! Hello, human. Chapter 41. Dragon tails, look at all those feather tails. The Irids are here, and they agreed to help. Nope, that's just my wishful thinking. The Irids are here, and they're arrogant pricks. But buckle up, buttercups, because it's story time. Not so little Andarna gives the 6 new dragons a TLDR of everything that has happened, from her time in her shell, to threshing, to stopping time for Violet, and why she needs her harness. Andarna is spilling all of the tea, and it's just as animated as Olaf re-encountering all of Frozen 1. This is sure to win over the hearts of our new friends, right? Right? Wrong. Why? Because this was all a test and humanity failed. Chapter 42. Why help the humans and dragons to save their people when you can sit back, relax, and watch the venom suck all the magic out of the land? With nothing else to say, the Irids take their leave, but not before being the biggest asshats the world has ever seen. Determining Andarna is Irid in scale and name only, and then wishing them peace, as if they didn't just condemn the whole continent to death. But wait, there's hope, because Leothin stays behind to ask a few follow-up questions. And perfect timing too, because Xaden and Garrick are here to join this round of 20 questions. Welcome to the group chat. Do you think the Irids would believe it if they said that Xaden had a little too much churrum this morning? Chapter 43. The rest of the riot returns shortly after the Irids leave, getting their own TLDR from Riddick. But they're all fucked because while they found the 7th Dragon Den, they have nothing to show for it. Might as well sign their court-martials now. Violet, seeing Riddick does not want to wait any longer to talk about Xaden's insane pink eye, takes him on a little rendezvous into the woods. And on this episode of Riddick Gamlin is left out of the loop again, Xaden is Venom. He channeled 3 times, and Garrick, Bodhi, and Imogen all know as well. And that's what you missed on Glee. Together, Violet and Riddick come up with a plan to set a boundary for Violet if Xaden goes too far. But they run into Xaden on their way back to the crew and agree to loop in Rhee, Sawyer, and Jasenia. But not Dane. He's still working on the whole rule-breaking thing. Xaden blames himself for the Irids leaving Andarna, but Violet promises to see just how big a lightning strike he can make when he stops brooding. I wonder if a certain chair will survive that round. Over 10 days and a lot of travel math later, Talons touch ground at Basgiath, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. But who's holding that knife? Daddy Atos! And that's not all he's holding. Theophany sent a missive and really proves she's Violet's #1 stalker. However, Daddy Atos also has some other tea to share with our squad. Suniva has fallen to the Dark Wielders, and Queen Mariah is dead! Dun dun dun!
Today's episode is sponsored by Paired. Have you ever wanted to take more time to connect with your partner, but the stresses and the to-do lists of life have gotten in the way? I feel like we can all relate to that, right? Well, Paired has helped me and Jake take that step together. It's so easy to build connection with my partner into our daily routine with Paired.
Here's how it works. You and your partner both download the app, you pair together, and every day, Paired sends you personalized questions, quizzes, and games to stay connected. Deepen your conversation and have a lot of fun too. The best part is that you can't see your partner's answers until you've answered yourself. So it's a safe space to have an open and honest conversation about your relationship. No faking it, no pretending, instead just genuine connection.
Jake and I are in what we call survival mode with 2 toddlers right now, and it can be so hard for us to just sit down and talk to each other and even have a conversation that's not about the kids or what needs to happen in the house or just about our days or work or, just like, I'll call it more of those surface level sorts of things. And Paired has really helped us dig deeper and connect with one another in such a present way. And it really helps us like just smile and feel like we're not just roommates, you know? And I love it so much how it's just such a simple little part of our routine, but it has such big benefits that we really look forward to every single day.
Whether you're just a few dates in or have been together a long, long time, find the time to connect with your partner and nourish your relationship. Start strengthening your relationship in an easy, fun way, and it only takes 5 minutes a day. Head to paired.com/FFG to get a 7-day free trial and up to 25% off when you sign up for a subscription. Head to paired.com/FFG to sign up today.
All right, writers, it is time to don our signet power and discuss key insights, character analysis, lore, foreshadowing, theories, and oh, so much more. Who's ready to go to Zelna, the Isle of Zanal, the god of luck? One of the first things our quest squad notices upon their arrival is the more vibrant colors of vegetation on this isle. They may not be as rich as on the continent, but there is definitely more color here than on the other 3 isles we've been to so far, which you know what that means. Zelna has traces of magic. Violet can feel a wave of energy rushing up her body. Taryn is breathing in the magic of the land, and the others can finally use their bonds to communicate with each other, which is just so wonderful. I love this moment so much as the rest of the crew reconnect with their closest companions after 2 weeks of not being able to talk to one another through their magical bonds. While there is magic here to feel the power of the bonds with their griffins and dragons and the dragons with the other dragons, there still isn't enough magic to properly shield and definitely not enough to wield their signets. But hey, this also means that Violet and Zadine have their bond back too. This conclusion that Zelna has magic brings up a really good question though. Why and how does it have magic? It goes back to what Rebecca Yarros explained, that different tectonic plates push different mountain ranges up, which results in more magic in some areas. Violet notes that there are more rises in elevation on this isle, and when they travel to the minor isles and feel magic there too, guess what? There's volcanoes and cliffs around there. So we have to wonder, is the topography the only reason for magic or lack of magic? For instance, do the gods somehow play into whether there is magic or not?
I 100% think that this is influenced because Zanal is just pure chaos and magic can absolutely add an element of chaos. So he's just like, let's stir the pot a little.
So this could also be an indication that they are getting closer to the Irid's hatching grounds, because we know that hatching grounds can change and amplify the magic in the area's wide perimeter. Jury's still out for answers to these questions though, because I kind of actually like I'll call it simplicity of world building, where some areas have more magic than others based on the landscape, and civilizations in each area are somewhat influenced by the presence of magic or lack thereof. I want to give this isle's unique capital city a moment in the spotlight because it is so cool. Zoetis is at the base of an enormous curved waterfall, with the river splitting around the city to make it appear like its own island. The city walls appear to rise from the water itself, and the city seems like it's built skyward, with buildings stacked on top of each other, defying any and all architectural logic. While I'm pretty sure this is just some really incredible architecture, I love how fitting it is that the God of Luck's Isle has a city layout that seems like it shouldn't be possible, almost as if the architecture is symbolically relying on luck, especially opposed to the rebuilding with intention we got from Hedotis.
Flying over Zelna, there is something very, very off, because the people on the isle below are waving, yoo-hoo! As they get closer and arrive in the amphitheater, they see that there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of humans here. Well, those are not very good fighting odds, but the Zelni are watching with excitement. Previously, our crew has been treated with prejudice, told to fight for their lives, and then literally were attempted to be murdered. So with this rather warm welcome, it's understandable why Quest Squad is pretty hesitant to trust anyone on this isle, with the exception of Traeger, who mentions how this might just be his favorite isle. Oh God, the irony hurts so good.
Violet puts it perfectly how this is, quote, easily the oddest and potentially most dangerous arrival we faced yet. They know how to defend themselves against hostility, but this catches them off guard in a whole new way.
It is obvious to say that they were definitely expected by the Zelny. We will learn from Calixta, who is unafraid by the dragons. She just basically walks past them, and the dragons are like, the fuck? Except for Indarna, who she bows to when learning that she is an Irid. Zelna heard word of their travels, and it reached them a few weeks ago. Yes, from Devarelli's warning to each isle that the quest squad is a-comin'. Imagine being Loisum just waiting, and then waiting some more. But they never arrive. Like, that's actually so funny. But ever since that quote-unquote warning, the Zelny have been doing some waiting of their own. People who have the time will come to the festival grounds and just basically rotate out as days go on. But given that today is the day they officially arrived, it looked like Zanal is with the spectators who were doing their waiting today. And even though some Zelny appear to be running away, it is not out of fear. They're much too smiley to be fleeing for their lives. No, they are off to spread the news that the travelers have finally arrived. The rest are quieting down and taking their seats in this massive amphitheater. While there are many colors that fill the crowd, everyone in the front row, who seem to be the officials of the game, or as I'm going to call them, the game makers, are dressed all in orange, the color of apricots. One thing is for sure, they are definitely gearing up for a show of some kind.
A show indeed, or rather festivities as Calixta will call them. Like the other isles, Zelna requires its newcomers to participate in a trial to gain an audience with its leadership. This isle is ruled by a queen who we don't actually meet or know her name. So how does the trial for the God of Luck work? I'm so glad you asked. Quick refresher from episode 6 archives on this very topic. The trial is made up of seeing what gifts Zanal has chosen for someone. So once the participants, aka Quest Squad, agree to play, a table, a single chair, and a canvas bag are brought out. Ooh. A deck of cards is taken from the bag and spread out face down on the table. Each card represents a gift, so the participants pull whatever gift Zanal inspires them to choose, and that is their gift he sees fit to bestow upon them. Importantly, a thanks must be given after receiving the gift. If every member of Quest Squad accepts their gift without complaint and expresses gratitude for it, they pass the trial and may gain entrance to the city and an audience with its queen.
Understandably, this trial is not about the crowd watching the newcomers open presents. No. This is a test to see how much they will accept and allow the God of Luck to determine their fate. This is the ultimate test of releasing control. You and I would fail this.
I would be so bad at this. Like, oh my gosh, the way that I would be trying to choose my card, it'd be like, oh no.
Not only with picking the card do they have to release control, but then accepting with thanks whatever card has been given to you, no matter what you get. And if you complain, that means you do not trust Zanal/Luck are your ultimate compass. Haha, get it? You must be able to adjust your next moves based on what Zanal has presented you with. And if you do complain, that means this isle cannot ally themselves with you. After all, quote from Calixta, we do not accept those who do not adjust their sails in a storm. I love that Xaden says, quote, no whining. I can respect that. Like, of course you can, my guy. Remember back from the first year who Under the Tree back in Fourth Wing was like, I don't like it here. How do I leave? And Xaden was like, yeah, you're gonna die. Sorry, accept it. And Xaden doesn't really do well with whiners, so I understand why he's like, okay, I can do this. However, he is also not one to know how to release control easily either. I'm surprised he does as well as he does here.
Auric once again proves he is the master of languages when he speaks this rather difficult dialect like he was born here. Once again, proving just how educated he is to be a diplomat and how intelligent he is to be able to speak these other languages so well.
I love how this language is described as like lilting and one word flows into the next. Like I think of French, where it's like the goal of French, at least this is how I was taught it, was to move your mouth as little as possible. It is like how easily can you make one word flow into the next? That is how French works. And this is, at least, again, that is how I was taught it. Please, French people, don't come after me. But like, I imagine this is exactly how the Zelna language is spoken.
Well, Auric certainly shows Dane up again. Poor Dane. Violet asks a very good question to Auric. Where were these language skills when we were translating journals last year? Auric replies that those are dead languages that he didn't learn to speak. Duh. He was taught to be a diplomat, not taught to dead people. This comment in and of itself is eye-opening to the royal education. Because again, we've been led to believe that Navarre cut off any and all contact with the Isles centuries ago. But we learned from Halden that this isn't the case, at least with Devarelli. Auric was taught all the Isle languages in preparation mission to be a diplomat with them, which makes me wonder if Navarian royalty has more connections to the other Isles that we're not currently aware of, which is why he learned these languages in the first place. Just very interesting to consider why his studies included all of this, especially because the royalty don't seem to acknowledge anything with him like the King of Deverelli did, where it's like, oh yes, with our past that we have. There's no mention of that, so I don't know. It's very interesting. Also, who wants to bet Halden did not care about learning these other languages because he thinks the common language is superior and everyone should just use that? That's such a...
Me. I will take that bet. Absolutely.
That's such a Halden thing.
I know, right?
Shifting this conversation about Auric being fluent in these Isle languages ever so slightly, it brings up the question about why Dane is here on Quest Squad. Remember that Violet brought Dane because he's the only one she trusts to be their translator, but this decision was made before Auric joined Quest Squad and definitely long before it was revealed Auric can fluently speak these Isle languages. So no one except Auric knew Dane would be redundant on this mission. But that's the key. Auric purposefully did not close the fact that he can speak these languages. Auric even explains why he didn't say anything. Quote, and nullify Atos' reason for joining, what is it Riddick calls us, Quest Squad? Knowing that Auric's precognition signet manifested before they all went on this mission, I'm convinced Auric saw something in the future that justifies why Dane had to come. He knew Dane needed to be on this mission for a future reason. However, I'll be honest, nothing from this entire mission seems to stand out as a Dane was really useful and needed moment. Like,
he just really wanted to watch Dane get slapped. Let's be real. He was like, this is worth it.
Dane fought in Umbriel, so one could argue he needed to be in that challenge where he just goes unconscious in case someone like Riddick replaced him and would have been killed. I don't know. Except Auric insisted on fighting himself in that trial, so I feel like he didn't expect Dane to fight. Then Dane helped in the all-hands-on-deck chaos of saving Garrick's life. But any other member could have potentially done the exact same things he did. And here Dane will be slapped, so it's not even like his gift moves Quest Squad forward in any way. Which leaves me to think there is no way for us to know the key to Dane's purpose on these Isles yet. And in the next book, he'll reveal maybe a little bit of information or something that he picked up on this mission that turns out to be important to the story, which is what Auric is aware of and why he alone knew Dane needed to go on this mission for a reason other than translating. Playing devil's advocate, this could also have nothing to do with Auric's signet, and it's simply to offer some humor at Dane's character's expense, and to incorporate him into the story so we just spend more time with him as his redemption arc solidifies. And, maybe Auric really just didn't want to say anything because all their bags were packed and they were about to take off. So it would have been a dick move to say, as a first year to his wing leader, oh, by the way, you're not needed.
A quick pause to tell you that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all need our support systems. One thing that Fantasy Fangirls has really taught me is to start leaning on those support systems. I am not someone who's very good at asking for help. In fact, that is something I am working on with my therapist. In a society that glorifies that hyper independence, it is so easy to forget that we all need to have that support system behind us. Therapy is a great source of support for any area of your life. It's time to shift the focus from doing it all to knowing that we're better when we ask for help.
This is actually the exact topic that my therapist and I have been talking about recently. She's really been a cheerleader for me to delegate and helping me coach through just letting go of that control that Nicole and I are always joking that we are a little bit tense about. So anyway, yeah, like Nicole always knows when I've had my therapy session because I'm like, oh yes, she's like, you had therapy yesterday, didn't you?
I feel like that goes both ways.
Yeah.
BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide. Access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Easily switch therapists at any time at no extra cost.
Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/FFG to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/FFG.
So with Calixta sitting behind a table, she reaches into the large canvas bag and pulls out a stack of cards the width of Violet's forearm. Goodness. I imagine that this canvas bag itself is filled with other game options. So I think about it as like Calixta's reaching in and Zanal is already in charge of picking even what game/trial they do in the first place. After shuffling the deck like a pro, Calixta lays out the cards face down on the table. Now, because we know from Rebecca Yarros in our Denver conversation with her that each of these gifts have meaning, yes, we are going to go through every single possible meaning/theory for each gift. First up is Mira. She walks the 6 feet to the table and picks a card without a second of hesitation.
I love that little detail of choosing it without hesitation. It's such a Mira, I don't have time for this move.
So real. And Zenal gifts you wine. I will never forget the moment when we were listening to this for the first time and we were reading at the same time. And it was like, Zenal gifts you wine. And you and I both look at each other and in sync go, yay, wine. Like every time I listen to the audiobook, that just plays in my head. The most logical reason I can imagine Mira getting wine is so that she can get drunk with Drake so that they finally have a night together.
Well, so you know what? From a historical context, wine has been known to symbolize romance.
Also does raise the question, though, and I think this is what it boils down to. Has Mira drank the wine yet?
So I'm inclined to say no because we haven't seen any evidence of how this will be meaningful. And while it's like a joking quip when she says, I'm gonna fucking need this, it could also be foreshadowing for her to need it in a unique instance.
See, I almost go the opposite, where I'm assuming, yes, she has drank it because it seems so impractical to just carry a bottle of wine around with her everywhere, and that's just not really Mira, unless she is like saving it for maybe a special toasting with her siblings. Like maybe we'll see her, Violet and Brennan all share it next book, which I kind of like that. That's very sweet.
I'm gonna be honest, after what happened to Traeger, I don't know if I would trust the wine to drink it.
Okay, well that actually brings me to my next theory. Is this wine poisoned? And will that come back into the story in some way? There's the epigraph around poison killing venom. And also, Brennan and Violet are poison masters. So could they decode this and figure out that it's some kind of venom killer?
Well, or along those same lines, maybe Mira will need to use the wine for poison and make poison out of it. She's not the poison master between her 3 siblings, so maybe this helps her in some way with that. Or I could see this bottle of wine somehow be useful in a trade. There's the little detail that it's a painted wine bottle. So could there be a deeper meaning to the painted part of this gift? Like something important is painted on it. Or as Sandra's Library points out on YouTube, this may even be foreshadowing that Mira will lead a mission to the Barrens in a future book, because in Iron Flame Chapter 2, the Barrens are described as painted in crimson, and I'm willing to bet this wine is red, aka crimson in its own way.
Well, that brings me to Religion Watch, which we haven't done in quite a while. In the Bible, wine has very many symbolic meanings, predominantly being a gift from God, which this is in a very literal sense, a gift from Zenal. But red wine specifically also means the blood of Jesus Christ, which I do wonder if this could be foreshadowing for Mira being killed and also essentially brought back. Like, I'm not totally comparing her to Jesus, but I'm also not saying it's not that way. She was not fully resurrected, a la Jesus style, but it could be that foreshadowing.
And then on Reddit, Santa Junipero brought up a great point about Mira's gift too, shifting the focus to the person who hands her the wine. It's a middle-aged woman with curly brown hair. Who else was a middle-aged woman with brown hair? Lilith Sorrengail, their mother. After Narelle told Mira that her mother raised her and she has her own legacy to inherit, could this wine, based on its giver, who could be interpreted as a stand-in for Lilith, facilitate that legacy in some way? Next up, Marin receives 2 orange tunics for her gift. These seem to be the same clothing that some of the people in Zelna wear, like Calixta, who is the mistress of today's festivities. The cards they're drawing also have bright orange patterns on the back, so I'm assuming that orange is this isle and the god of luck's color, which does make some sense, considering the color orange symbolizes enthusiasm, fascination, happiness, creativity, and determination. But it can also mean lack of seriousness, impatience, frivolity, and caution. I feel like 80% of all the above can be wrapped up in the meaning of luck. While we're talking about the color orange, Sandra, in that same YouTube video I referenced earlier, makes the connection of all the orange flags in Pormeal where the Venin are moving in. So could this be foreshadowing and a tie-in for Marin being a flyer protecting her homeland? Moving away from the focus of orange and more onto this gift being pieces of clothing. Perhaps they'll come in handy if Marin has to return to Zelna, especially if it's an undercover mission where she has to maybe blend in with the locals. Or this will relate relate somehow to Zelna's army that will be making its way to the continent. We also can't forget Marin has 2 little brothers, so maybe they'll be the ones who end up wearing it and making use of these tunics some way, somehow.
I also want to pause and talk, going back to the color orange. Orange is the color of the dragons that are most unpredictable in the continent. And I love that it's tied in with the Zelni, who are very unpredictable in their own way. So I am going to go on to a crack theory. What if this is foreshadowing that Marin will be one of the first ever Griffin flyers to also bond a dragon, specifically an orange dragon? So she'll be like the first ever dragon / Griffin flyer rider.
Okay, so if we're just having fun with crazy crack theories right now, maybe this is foreshadowing that Marin will be the one to kill Jack fucking Barlow with 2 oranges.
All right, we're spiraling. It's time to move on to Dane. Dane's card is a picture of a hand, and I love this. He goes to shake the woman's hand, and then she just slaps him across the face so hard that it turns his head. And then he looks to the woman and thanks her for it. Iconic. I truly believe that the meaning of this gift was fully for comedic relief. This is just the last of that fuck you, Dane energy being expelled. I said this during our Romantasy BookCon live show. It feels like such a, and now we're even. It's such great irony though, because Dane reads memories with a hand to the face. He just gets slapped in the face. Oh my God. It's also so poetic because they're on a mission where Dane truly gets the shit end of the stick over and over again. His main purpose was completely nullified by Arik just opening his mouth. He was chosen to fight in Umbriel and was knocked out cold within minutes. He also had to translate for Xaden to get Silk in Deverelli, and now he's slapped. It's just one more reason for Dane to be like, fucking really?
And this is an all humbling Dane one more time, just for us readers and Xaden.
There are some theories that when this slapper connected her hand to Dane's face, Dane read her memories and saw something. However, for multiple reasons, I'm inclined to say that this is a fun theory and I just can't get on it quite yet. First, we know from the end of part 1 of Iron Flame that he has to search through someone's memories before finding the right one. It's like the Google search, but it's the time that Google takes to find the Google searching. So unless she just happened to be thinking of something really important when she slapped him, he wouldn't have time to do that Google search. And also normally it's his hand that needs to be connected to someone's temples, not the other way around. Also, he shouldn't have enough magic to channel according to Violet. Yes, there is a little bit of magic on the Isle. And yes, Sloane mentions how he's super duper powerful, which I will actually also be getting to later this episode and talking about that. But I feel like he would need to really concentrate. And frankly, he was a little too taken aback to be in memory stealing duty. So for that reason, I'm going to stick to this just being Dane getting the shit end of the stick.
So I think I'm going to rephrase that a little bit because it's not so much Dane continuing to get the shit into the stick, but it's the final punishment for his betrayal in Fourth Wing. And now we can all collectively move on. There's also the question of whether this is a slap for a future incident. And this is actually foreshadowing that Dane will be in need of a slap. Again, will he need another wake-up call in the future? Maybe specifically related to his dad in some way? Dane's firmly already on Violet's side, and we know how much Rebecca loves his character. So I'm leaning no on this being foreshadowing for a future wake-up call, but had to throw it out there too.
Totally.
Then we have Garrick, who gets a rusted steel bucket. What the heck could this mean? LateBath4508 on Reddit wonders if the bucket can somehow help amplify his signet ability to distance wield, where it's like this bucket transports items for him. Sandra's Library says that Garrick himself acts as a bucket during the final battle as he moves things and people from place to place, and that because his metaphorical bucket is empty when we're in Imogen's POV, it might be a hint that he is the one who becomes the Venom brother, because he's not feeling enough. He needs more. And so his bucket is empty. He pulls from the source to fill his metaphorical bucket. Running with this idea that the rusted steel bucket is a symbol for Garrick becoming the Venom brother, Ange DM'd us and pointed out that this rusty bucket seems useless and it can't be used because it's not good enough. Just like how Rebecca said the new brother feels. I'm going to channel my inner Nicole and do a metal watch because steel symbolizes protection, balance, and control, which this certainly seems to describe Garrick, especially with his role of watching over Xaden the Venin. Could the rusted part of this be a reflection of his failure to protect Xaden from himself?
Next up, we've got our boy Auric, who receives a fractured hand mirror, and it immediately cuts his hand, which I feel like this is going to be important that he marked it with blood. Why? Maybe I've been reading too much Quicksilver. Other than that, I have absolutely no clue.
Well, especially with cutting himself, if we're zooming in on that consequence of Zanal's gift, I can't help but think back to what Auric said at the dinner table in Hedotus about how he'll probably die in this war. And this could be an unfortunate nod toward that. Blood often symbolizes sacrifice, and Auric has already accepted his fate as he sacrifices himself for the cause. Or the mirror may symbolize his precog signet, and when he nicks himself, it's like a warning about the potential dangers of his signet. Or it could be a literal representation of the cost of his gift and the pain it can induce.
Interesting. So I immediately looked up the meaning behind broken mirrors. Typically, it equals 7 years of bad luck. There's that same number, 7. Romans believed that breaking a mirror means you trap your soul into a mirror, which sounds a lot like Veninism, which a lot of people could see this as foreshadowing for him being the Venin brother. There's also broken mirrors in literature, which typically symbolize fractured identities, which seems pretty on par with Auric right now.
And how he has to merge both these identities, Auric the Dragon Rider and Prince Kamtari, into one new identity.
I also really can't help but think about that moment in Harry Potter where there's a twin mirror that connects to each other. Could it be something like this where someone else has the other mirror and they would be able to communicate or look into each other when it's activated? Maybe it's only activated and only works for the person who cuts blood on it. So it's like that. It's a blood bond, I'll call it. But then my mind starts to absolutely freak out because who would have the other mirror? And this is where I went crazy. What if Venin Naolan is undercover working as a Venin, and on the inside he has the mirror? Maybe he got it from Erasia and he took it with him. But if that's the case, then they would have direct contact with, I don't know, I went crazy. I was working on this, and that made total sense in my head. And now
petition for me to get a fun theory noise. So a button that I can press.
All right, I'm going to completely go sideways here because there's other lores that do have mirrors. I can't help but think about, Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall. While in the Disney movie and in the original Brothers Grimm tale, the royal is asking who is the most beautiful in all the land. Now, I don't think that would be necessarily Auric, but maybe Auric can ask the mirror something and it tells, if someone's lying, or it tells or shares the truth or something like that.
Or perhaps this mirror can help him use his signet, where it's like he can use it to see a variety of outcomes, which is easier for him to sort through than however it plays out in his head.
All in all of this to say, I think we can agree possibly that this is not just a mirror for mirror's sake. It's Auric. Pretty mystical things tend to happen to him. Now, whether that means that this is a mystical mirror and Naolan just so happens to have the matching mirror, I don't know about that. But I definitely think that this mirror, specifically his cut on it, will absolutely come back into play.
That's interesting. I'm leaning toward this mirror representing Auric's fractured identity. It just feels so fitting for him, and that the blood is a representation of a warning for him or something like that. Zooming out to talk about these gifts as a whole, I would honestly be shocked if these gifts are magical.
Really?
Yeah.
I think some are.
Well, so we know that Zelna has some magic, so it's more likely that these objects have magic in them than objects on other isles. But I still feel like they wouldn't just give it away. I think it would actually be cooler if these were not magical items and they somehow had their own meaning in a non-magical way, and only a few of them will actually be real plot devices moving forward.
I do agree that not all of them are going to be magic. The rusted bucket, I think, is just a rusted bucket. The bottle of wine, if anything, I think it might be poisoned. Broccoli is, in my opinion, not a magical cat. But I do see the fractured hand mirror, just again, because it's who got it. Auric and Violet are two people who mystical things tend to happen to them over and over again. And if there is anyone who gets the extra magical item, I think it would be those two.
Let's move on to Xaden, who gets an empty glass box the size of his foot, so it's of considerable length, you could say, with pewter hinges and edges. As he says, at least that's better than getting slapped, which that would have been freaking hilarious too. But anyway, back to Metal Watch. Pewter symbolizes seriousness and practicality, which is certainly an accurate description of Xaden.
So I wonder if this box is just for, I'm going to call it practicality's sake. He does put the Blade of Erasia in this box. It's something that Violet will see at the end of this book, and she'll see that the Blade of Erasia is in it, but with a mysterious missing emerald. Da-da-da-da, her future wedding ring. I also wonder if this is something that Violet's going to continue to look at in book 4, and it will be one of those constant reminders of Xaden. There's also some theories that this is a magical box and it can transport items. Not to go back to Harry Potter, but I can't help but think about the Vanishing Cabinet. And I do love this idea, but again, I don't think that this is a box of nothingness. I don't think it's going to have any extra magical powers. Instead, it's just a practicality sake.
I'm going to say yes for now, because if we look at what else is glass in the series, there is one thing that truly stands out: Violet's conduit that she received from Felix in Iron Flame. Maybe this glass box of Xaden's will serve as a conduit for her, but it's bigger and potentially can hold more power. It would probably have to have some runes tempered into it, because I think that Felix mentioned something like that. So it's not currently a conduit, but it can be turned into a conduit. There's also the possibility that this empty glass box represents, or will represent, Xaden losing his soul. One theory I've seen a few times even suggests that Xaden will find a way to put pieces of his soul into the box. So while his soul won't be part of him anymore as a Venin, at least it's not dead like the Irids will explain. Xaden dismisses this gift as a box of nothingness, but that could also be a description of a Venin with no soul. Sanjuniperno on Reddit again wonders if maybe Xaden's box contains items representing his soul, like the Blade of Erasia, which symbolizes his territory, and Violet's compass, because he said that she owns his soul. Then if Violet charges this glass box, using it as a conduit, maybe Xaden can draw from it and pull his soul back into himself.
Interesting. I don't think it's going to be soul in a literal sense, like she charges it and it comes back to him. I love this idea, though, that it's things that symbolize his soul.
Yep.
That is stunning. God, I love that. And now it is time to move on to Violet, who walks up to Calixta and chooses the card on the far left. And it's the compass. A tall man with bronze skin and short black hair comes up and studies her for a long enough moment to make it to the point where it becomes quite awkward.
I'm sorry to have to bring up Sanjuniperno again, because I just really love this Reticle article. They noticed a lot of similarities between this man's physical characteristics and Xaden. Even the way he smiles when Violet lifts her chin, quote, as though finding my reaction worthy, is such a Xaden move. So it could be interpreted that this Xaden representative is giving her her gift.
And I'm not going to lie, I love that. It's so much extra epicness with the ending context of his note, "Don't look for me." And she gets a fucking compass. It's literally the symbolism of, air quotes, him handing her a compass after saying, "Don't look for me." I fucking love that. So with a smirk, this man offers her a black compass on a chain so she can put it around her neck. But when she looks at it, she notices the needle does not point north. And so she assumes it's broken. But Calixta did not say the broken compass. No, she just said the compass. So we as a fandom can pretty much guarantee that this compass is not broken. Right, Lexi?
I think that it depends on what broken means.
I thought the word broken was pretty clear, but okay.
Well, it does not point north. And so I do think that in that regard, yes, it would be broken. But as we know from lots of fantasy, a compass that does not point north still can be very useful.
You are very literal, and I love you for that. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's not a true compass in the point where it shows her where north is, but it's going to be pointing in another direction. But since we don't know what direction this compass is pointing at in this moment, we don't get that extra clue. And trust me, I looked everywhere to see a sign of direction. Like, are they facing the waterfall? Is the waterfall north? And no, it's not. Like, I tried to find anything that told us where north is, and I couldn't find anything. But if you search the word compass in the book, there's one other major instance of the word compass. It's when Xaden looks at Violet, quote, like a compass pulled north. How interesting that this compass does not point to north on the Isle, but we get a connection of Xaden, compass, and north later. Almost like the compass will lead to Xaden. And that brings me to the most popular assumption as to what this compass will be used for. If you have watched Pirates of the Caribbean, you know that there is a compass in it that will point to whatever your heart desires most. However, this is not just in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's also used in other fantasy tales. And I'm not going to lie, this is actually one of the reasons I'm leaning away from this being what the compass is going to be used for, because of how, I'm going to say, popular this particular trope is. Rebecca Yarros loves to take classics or even some of our favorite theories or tropes and turn them on its head. It's like it's 60% right, but then there's that extra 40% twist that makes it totally unique. So if this does point to whatever her heart desires most, there's absolutely going to be some kind of extra twist with it. So let's throw out some other ideas. The symbolism for a classified signet is a compass. Violet is about to uncover that she has one of the most classified second signets literally ever. So it could be foreshadowing for her to keeping her signet under wraps. I also read a theory somewhere, and I'm so sorry I couldn't find the name of the original poster, that says she will only be able to use this signet or this compass while she's dreamwalking. So she's only able to use the compass while she's using her classified second signet, aka the symbol of a compass for the patch. Now, another theory is that it could be a venom tracker, so it'll point to venom, but that feels too simple. So I feel like, again, the extra 60% would be missing. Lastly, at least for now, is that it could have something to do with the gods. And I think this is one of my most favorite ones. In chapter 39's epigraph from Asher Sorrengail's research, quote, sometimes the best gift the god of luck can give is his absence. So maybe this is why the compass appears broken. It's only activated when Zinal decides, you could use a little chaos in your life, and bestows luck upon her. Or, this is my favorite, it could have to do with Dune. Does it point to the safest route? Or does it point to the route with the highest danger? Or does it point to the highest danger period? I know I keep referencing Harry Potter here, but I think about like the sneaker scope, something that is looking out for potential danger all around. And then in a meeting, it will point to someone in the room and it's like, fuck, that person's bad. Maybe it'll point to Daddy Atos and it's like, shit, you're a venom. No matter what, I do believe that Violet still has the compass, even though we don't hear about it again after this Isle adventure. Because Xaden does say it's bad luck to throw away a gift from Zinal. Plus, it's a fantasy compass. There is no way that shit is just going to be tossed aside and never used again.
Oh my gosh, Nicole. This episode is a marathon. And on these marathon episodes, it is important that we keep ourselves hydrated and ready to go. And if you know us, Element has been an absolute staple in our lives. It helps us know for a fact that we are staying hydrated all day long.
If you are familiar with us here at Fantasy Fangirls, you know we love Element. Not only does it help us hydrate, but every sip feels like a treat. Element is a zero sugar electrolyte drink and sparkling electrolyte water born from the growing body of research revealing that optimal health outcomes occur at sodium levels 2 to 3 times government recommendations. Each stick pack delivers a meaningful dose of electrolytes free of sugar, artificial colors, and other dodgy ingredients.
Element has so many different flavors to choose from and fall in love with. Now that the weather's getting warmer, I'm eyeing that watermelon flavor, which is just my summer staple. Grapefruit and citrus are two of my other favorites. Mango chili has started to make an appearance again. I just love them all so much.
I love mango chili so much. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packets free with any Element order. This is a great way to try 8 of their awesome flavors or share Element with a salty friend. You can get yours at drinkelement.com/FFG. This deal is only available through our link. You must go to DRINKLMNT.com/FFG.
Riddick draws a card with a painted pair of lips, which leads the man to clasp Riddick's face with 2 hands and then smacks a loud kiss on each of his cheeks. Woo! What in the world could the meaning of this kiss be? It honestly could be as simple as comedic relief, and how very fitting this is for Riddick. This gift of his leans into the idea that Riddick is blessed by Zanal. There's even a theory that he is aware that he is blessed by this god, and that's a big reason why he insists on going on Quest Squad, so his luck can help protect Violet too. Riddick has said that he prefers Zanal because you can get through anything with luck. This gift may be Zanal's way of saying thank you to Riddick. On the flip side, there is concern that this is a kiss of death for Riddick, and it's foreshadowing for his looming end. We discussed last episode how his close call from the Hedotus cook may be foreshadowing, and that his death is the one coming for us in book 4. So yeah, that's concerning.
Yes, and on tour for Onyx Storm, Rebecca did mention how, she said it in passing, but she said how she's not planning on killing Riddick. And then she immediately changed the subject. So I don't know if that was a Freudian slip or that was well, I'm not planning on killing Riddick right now, at least. And so I'm taking that as he's safe because I need that little blanket of comfort.
I do too. And also it's like he's had so many close calls with death. Again, it is like Zanal is blessing him and he is that lucky. So I'm going to stick with the meaning that this gift is Zanal showing his appreciation for Riddick believing in him and that it is a good sign for him. Moving on to Kat, who receives a gold necklace with a dangling ruby the size of Violet's thumb.
Gem watch! In medieval Europe, rubies were worn to guarantee health, wealth, wisdom, and success in love. It also symbolizes romance, which is quite interesting, seeing how she is gifted something that symbolizes romance and success in love right before Traeger gets murdered. Could this be a subtle reference to how he has to die to make way for an eventual powerful match? Like Auric?
This ruby gift may also be foreshadowing for Kat's rise to the Peromish throne. That's definitely what I'm leaning toward here. Although that would be very sad because that means Serena, her sister, will have to die. And unfortunately, that is something that is very possible. And also Takaris, too, would have to die, which probably wouldn't be too surprising for anybody with all the foreshadowing of Cordon's downfall. You know who else in the series is associated with rubies in this book? The Duchess of Moraine, another noble woman who symbolizes power and status and wealth. So that's what I'm taking this to mean for Kat.
So it was also the Duchess of Moraine's daughter who she was trying to set Xaden up with. So it also is that nice little pairing of people are trying to betroth Xaden to people of eventual power when he's like, no, I want Violet. But then we have Drake, who walks up and draws the claw. A man the size of a bear comes walking up, and Violet's mind starts whirling. What if his nails are filed to sharp points? What if we get another Panther situation? But then he reaches into his pocket and takes out a mewling kitten. Welcome to the story, Broccoli, the kitty cat who took over the world. Other than this adorable cat taking over our hearts, much to Rebecca Yarros' surprise, I will never forget being on stage with her. And she was in the middle of this like really interesting answer. And then she just looks at the ground and she goes, are those broccolis? And there were broccoli stickers all over the stage floor from people in the front row.
I actually had one on my desk the other day. I must have moved it, but it is somewhere in this vicinity.
Mine's weirdly still in my car, and now I don't want to take it out because it feels like Zanal's with me when I'm driving. Anyway, let's talk about the importance that broccoli might introduce into our story. I absolutely think that broccoli is going to be the thing that brings Mira and Drake together. It's almost like they take responsibility over a kitten and raise it as a couple. Later, when Drake is struggling to hold the kitty cat and look at the map, Mira says, give me that. But instead of taking the map, she takes the kitten and snuggles it. They're already finding a groove as cat parents. I'm so proud. I also absolutely see Broccoli at some point running off, and by our crew chasing after Broccoli, they discover something. Basically, like, what if Broccoli runs into a cave and then they have to run in after him, and then it's like all these drawings or something on the cave, and it's like a whole other information about the Irids and the how they killed the Venom. I don't know. Basically, I see Broccoli.
That's so Game of Thrones.
I see Broccoli as the Zanal gift that keeps on giving, but why an orange tabby cat? It is time for my much too extensive orange cat research that got cut from our Romantasy BookCon outline.
So, quick behind the scenes for you all. Romantasy BookCon, our live show, had to be under 1 hour, right? And we only had 3 theories, and the Xenal gifts were one of them. So, if you want even more talk about the Xenal gifts, go listen to that. But I was like, Nicole, we have to cut some of this stuff out. Like, I think the orange tabby cat, like, pages might have to go. And I won't say argued over it, but there was a little bit of back and forth there. And finally was like, okay, fine, I know I have to take it out. And then for this episode, you're like, but I'm putting it back in. It's like, okay.
And you know what?
We have no time limit here, so here you go.
I did even more for that. I spent an extra hour researching all things orange tabby cats. It was great. I loved it. So let's start with a quick DNA lesson about orange tabby cats. The reason orange cats are orange is because of an orange gene, literally called orange gene, on the X chromosome. That is the reason the cats get the pigment phenylalanine, which gives them that signature color. And this does affect the sex of orange tabby cats because there's about 4 male orange cats to every 1 female. So Broccoli being a girl cat is extra special. What about the typical orange cat temperament? They are thought to be more affectionate and friendlier than other cats, which sometimes does align, but more commonly does not align with the term orange cat behavior. If you have ever owned an orange cat, you know that those tabbies can be unhinged, agents of chaos, if you will, which makes me so excited to see what the heck Broccoli might get up to. Although this orange cat behavior is not scientifically proven yet, they have been proven to be more likely to engage in risky behavior that results in death. But we know Broccoli's not going to die. We know that Broccoli is safe. They are also usually great explorers. Orange cats are also wildly popular in the media. For instance, Garfield, Orangey from Breakfast at Tiffany's, Spot from Star Trek The Next Generation, Puss in Boots, and of course now the beloved Broccoli. Lastly, let's talk about the symbolism behind orange tabby cats. This is where I really see Broccoli coming into our story. Spiritually, they symbolize optimism and leading a world to change. They can also be seen as messengers from the gods in ancient Chinese culture. Orange cats are also commonly associated with energy, creativity, courage, transformation, spiritual awakenings, and passion. They are symbols for good luck and fortune in many different cultures. Way to go, Drake. In Scotland, they are thought to bat away demons and bad spirits. But most importantly, they are wildly known to bring happiness, like maybe a girlfriend named Mira Sorengale. So all in all, a very positive outlook for Drake and his gift of the kitty cat. Later, we will learn that this cutie patooty's name is dubbed Broccoli. Why Broccoli, you ask? Because no one wants broccoli, but it's good for you. I really like broccoli and I want broccoli sometimes, so I feel a little attacked here. But then when Mira asks, why not carrots? She's orange after all. He says, quote, just to frustrate you, Sorengale. Again, I truly believe that this type of banter is Mira's love language. And there is my extensive research on orange tabby cats.
Bravo, Nicole. Very good. Now, you did mention real quickly, because one of the fandom's biggest questions by the end of Onyx Storm is, where is Broccoli? So to confirm, Rebecca did say that Broccoli is safe with Drake in Corden at the end of this book. And when we insisted Rebecca has to give us at least one name of a character who is safe for the entire series, she initially was not willing to tell us anybody. And finally it was like, okay, well, is Broccoli safe? And she said, yes, I would not kill a cat. So there you go, everybody. Broccoli is the only character in this entire series that is definitely safe and will not die.
Thank God. Before we get into our final gift, I have to ask, who do you think got the best gift of the bunch? Because it's obviously not shot through the heart, Traeger.
That's easy. It's Drake. He got an adorable orange kitten out of it. I will say, if I'm being practical, which I usually am, I am allergic to cats, so I would not say no to Cat's gift of a ruby necklace. But you know what? I would take daily allergy medicine for Broccoli.
Like, obviously, it's Mira's gift. She got a bottle of wine. It's so non-threatening. I don't know. You drink it and it's done.
I'd be afraid that that thing has poison in it after what happens to Traeger.
But you don't have to carry it around for 15 years like a cat.
This is why you don't have a pet, Nicole. Jeez.
I'm just going to say, if I am a griffin flyer or even a dragon rider, one of the last things I would want is a cat that thinks for itself and could run off on its own, and I would be responsible for it. This is why I don't have children.
I'm so sorry, friends, but it is time to talk about the final gift. Traeger, who said upon arrival here that this is his favorite isle, who never gave up on the girl Jim Halpert style, who helps heal the wounded, pulls the arrow card. And for the first time, the crowd goes silent because Zanal has spoken. In an instant, an arrow shoots through his heart and he staggers, reaching for his girl, Kat. And he's dead before Riddick and Violet can catch him. R.I.P. our beloved second squad flyer. What a long way we've come with you, Traeger, since Iron Flame. He and Ree hit it off really badly, which led to him challenging her on the mat right before they became squad mates. But then he flew to help with the Battle of Biscayeth, and he became a close part of second squad ever since. He came on this quest squad for his healer training, and unfortunately, Zanal is not with him on this tragic day. R.I.P. Traeger, you will be missed, especially by poor Kat, who will blame herself because she's the one who asked him to come on this mission. As we will reflect on the meaning of his gift like we've been doing with the others, I think this is the most straightforward one. Traeger's death will lead Quest Squad to venture to the minor isles and off their route, which will result in the Eards showing themselves, and that whole interaction will begin to shortly. Wild_Harp on Reddit also pointed out that Traeger's shot in the heart is like a reference to Cupid about his relationship with Kat. Falling in love is often depicted as taking an arrow from Cupid and, well, he's in love with Kat and gets an arrow straight through his heart.
I also can't help but think about what I said earlier, where his relationship with Kat was to help her get over wanting the Xaden crown. She didn't want Xaden. She wanted the power that was associated with Xaden. So then she found someone who she truly had feelings for. And then maybe next time she's going to get someone who has both the power and the feelings with her. So it's almost like that progression of love that we all have.
Of true love, that true love of knowing what it feels like to truly be cared about. And she will know that she needs that in her next relationship.
So I think that there is going to be another relationship for Kat. I think it's going to be a second, obviously. But I still think it might be Auric. I'm kind of more and more on the Auric train, especially now that Dane is off the table because he's got a Sloan. As everyone starts to realize that Traeger's gift is not so great, we get a myriad of reactions. Riddick and Violet run to catch him and start to panic with guilt when Riddick confirms he's dead. Garrick grabs Riddick while Xaden grabs Violet, and using the wing leader voice for really the first time in a while, he tells her to look at him and not react. Because if she does, everything they've done to get here, the long flights, everyone's weird-ass gifts, getting this close to meeting with the queen, getting this close to gaining an army and help them in the war, it will all be thrown away in less than a heartbeat. Remember back in Iron Flame when Violet told Ree that because of the Bisgayeth Way, constantly having death all around them, watching Orally fall, prior burning, cadets dying left and right on the mat, quote, prepared me for the moment I had to leave Liam's body on the ground and fight. While this is a very different type of fighting than she had to do when she left Liam behind in Russin, Violet needs to shove down any reaction, any anger or grief that her squad mate is now dead, to focus on the next step in front of them. Meanwhile, Drake is holding back Kat, covering her mouth as she screams, and even though his face falls as a result, he whispers something in her ear, assuming, because we don't know exactly what it is, it's something that is very similar to what Xaden is saying here, reminding her of why they cannot react.
My heart breaks for Kat here. She's finally moved on from chasing the Tyrandora crown and found true happiness with someone who genuinely loves and cares about her. It's been a budding romance, new and exciting and full of hope, and now it's taken away from her before it had a real chance to flourish. As we sadly know, griffins die with their flyers. We saw this firsthand with Luella and her griffin during the treacherous climb up the cliffs of Draelor, and Kat reminded us again on Hedotus when she defended Griffin's decisions to bond humans and expressed her respect and trust in them. What she says illustrates the mutual relationship between Griffin and Flyer in a way the writers don't really have with their dragons. Dragons are much stronger than humans, and most of them outlive their bonded riders. Humans are their pets, as we've discussed at length, but there's a little bit more of an equal partnership between Griffin and Flyer. So we know what happens next. Traeger's Griffin, Silaraine, begins stumbling, quote, like she can reach Traeger if she just tries hard enough, as her life force fades after the death of her bonded. Kat's Griffin is close by her side as she falls, then drapes a wing over her Griffin friend's lifeless body. R.I.P. Scylla. Oh, this part's just so sad.
Oof, I think we need another quick breather after all of that. Let's take a quick break and talk about some things that we are dreaming about. We all dream of making our space more like home. My ideal home decor is it's very monochromatic, but I like that crisp, clean, white grays look. And Wayfair has basically helped me stylize my entire apartment that way. It's helped me turn that dream of bringing my style into my space a reality.
There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle any project with endless inspiration, whether you need a light refresh or an organization overhaul. We are currently undergoing an organization overhaul in our home right now, and my husband just recently hung up a bunch of stuff on the walls. It's really starting to feel like home, and it's so wonderful. And our furniture, our decorations, our organization stuff, it is all from Wayfair.
Head over to wayfair.com and find something that is just your style today. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. It would be very easy for Xaden, master of the stone face, to take over and step forward to accept thanks for Traeger's gift, but he knows as much as he would like to take away Violet's pain right now, she is the one who has to step forward. She's in command after all, and Calixta and the rest of the Zelny crew know it. Command has never tasted so horrible to Violet. She wants to fight. She wants to turn her wrath into vengeance because of what they've done to her squad mate. But that would be, frankly, the easy option. And this is not an easy option kind of day. If she fails, if she fights back, sure, that would make her feel better for the moment. But, quote, if I fail, we will have lost another squad mate, another year mate for nothing. Back in Iron Flame, when Violet asked Xaden what watching others, specifically the first years, dies makes her, Xaden answered that it makes her a second year. Quote, the first year is when some of us lose our lives. The second year is when the rest of us lose our humanity. As Violet turns and steps forward next to Traeger's dead body and his griffin beside him, she expels yet another piece of that humanity as she thanks the Zelny. Violet later will be talking to Xaden, believing that this moment of indecision, shock, wrath, wish to fight back, wanting others to step in so that she does not have to wear this leadership like a weight. She feels like she froze. Everything was on the line and she froze, almost losing the entire mission and failing as a leader as a result. But as Xaden reminds her, A, you didn't freeze. You went into shock at the sudden loss of your year mate. That makes you human to having a reaction to death of someone that you care for. And B, this is leadership. You will lose someone under your command. Leadership is about doing the shit that's incredibly hard when you, more than anything, just want to crumble. And the best leaders aren't those who seek it out, but instead the ones who are thrust into the position even when they don't want the job, much like Violet. Just like many of us when we are in a momentary pity party for ourselves, it looks like these words don't exactly take her out of this anger, guilt, and feeling like she's not enough for the job. So Xaden instead tries a different tactic. Quote, I've seen the moments where you don't just rise to the occasion, you own it. Devarelli, Umbriel, you poisoned the entire triumvirate of Hedotus, for fuck's sake. Imagine who you'll become when you finally learn to not only embrace that confidence, but live it. Round of applause for a man who reminds his woman that she is more than enough as she is.
During this later conversation, Xaden reminds Violet that Indarna chose her, Tarn chose her, and in battle, it isn't the humans who give commands, it's the dragons. Quote, you are selected by a general among dragons. You can choose to step into leadership or he can drag you. Either way, you're going to end up in front. This ending up in front is both in the literal and figurative sense, because we all know how Tarn literally needs to be in the front of everything. She was chosen by a leader who saw a leader within her and believes her worthy to be in the front with him as his rider. I love the realization that, quote, Coda speaks through Melgren, not the other way around. Just like how Violet's dragons speak through her, and she is finding her confidence and courage in that, especially in Onyx Storm. That line about Melgren and Coda also feels like Melgren can't be Venin because of the black dragon he's bonded to, but that's a conversation for another day. Feeling like she isn't worthy of such leadership, Violet says that Tarn chose poorly, but we all know that is not true. Just like Xaden knows it's not, and tells her. This little scene also feels like a promise of what we'll get to see in Violet for these next few books. Onyx Storm is Violet stepping into leadership and beginning to own it when she needs to, but I believe the next book will be her truly starting to embrace her role as a leader, as the Duchess of Tyrrendor, and as a writer with 2 very powerful signets, and I just can't wait for her.
I mean, never forget what Rebecca Yarros said, Violet's song. I asked her if you could describe Violet in book 4 as a Taylor Swift song, what would it be? And she said, "Look What You Made Me Do," which was not what I was expecting. That is a song that's literally like, fuck the world, I'm going to take over it. So I'm really excited. 8 hours later from the trial, woof, Xaden, Mira, Arik, and Violet return to their squad, who are still by Traeger and Scylla's bodies. It is wild because they've been off for 8 hours to meet with the queen of this isle, and we never get to learn anything about her. I just want to know, is she as chaotic as the rest of them? Is she totally normal? I don't know. But my question is for you, do you think we're ever going to meet the queen of Zelna?
Because her army is coming to the continent, I want to say yes. Maybe not that she would be going with them, but that we will have some kind of communication with her. However, I will also say this, out of all the isles, this is the one I think we're least likely to go to again. Violet definitely does not want to come back to this isle, so the queen would have to come to the continent, and she doesn't strike me as a warrior like Marlise is. That is simply an assumption. We do not know anything about this queen. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So I think maybe we'll see her, but not on Zelna.
I think that if anything, we might get written communication with her. Yes. I could see that. We do know from Rebecca Yarros that there are a few scenes that got cut from the final version of Onyx Storm simply because of word limit and space reasons and, stacking books on a shelf. So I wonder if this 8-hour scene with the queen was one of the things that got cut.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was. The only one that we do have confirmed was cut was the heist into Daddy Atos' new quarters.
Yeah. In these 8 hours, negotiations were made and met, and it was all too easy to come to terms which are oddly favorable to Navarre. And I truly wonder why this is. Are they favorable to anyone who passes their trial? Did the Queen of Zelna have her own vibe check that she did before they came to meet her? Does she have a magic 8-ball of sorts? The Zanal version of the magic 8-ball? And she asked Zanal, how easy should I make it for them? And then she shook it really hard, and then it came up with, super easy.
I have a crack theory.
Oh, gimme!
What if Zelna was the unnamed isle back with the Second Croveland Uprising, and they were the ones that wanted dragons? And so by sending their troops to the continent, they think that this is their way in to now get dragons. And so their ultimate goal is to get dragons, and this is their way of facilitating that.
I love that even your crack theories have so much element of possibility. Whatever it was that made it so easy to do these negotiations, dang, it is pretty good for our quest squad. Zelna will send an advance party within the next few months, and the rest of their troops will follow whenever they're ready and prepared to receive 40,000 more people in Navarre. When they say receive, I do wonder, does this mean that Navarre, specifically Eratia, because I'm assuming that's where they're going to come, just like the advance party does at the end, does that mean Eratia has to provide lodging, food, weapons, etc. for all these people? And if so, poor Brennan, because homeboy is already losing sleep over the sheep population. Imagine 40,000 people.
Well, and then Xaden's going to be opening up his borders to Tyrrendor for the Paromish next episode. So yeah, they're going to have some food stuff. At least Ree's family with their store is going to be nice and busy.
Oh, they're going to be loading in. I love it. Drake does have a really good point, though, even though he is saying it to, not so subtly, share with Kat how valuable it is that this happened, which means how valuable it is that Traeger died. With 40,000 soldiers, they have more people to man the crossbolts to shoot the wyvern out of the sky, not to mention the increase of patrols they'll be able to do so that the venom stops slipping through the cracks. This 40,000 is a huge win.
But despite this win and the first truly useful alliance they've secured with an isle, hopelessness is creeping up on Violet. They are running out of isles to find the 7th dragon den. At least with the main isles, there's only one left for them to search. Violet has placed so much on the line as she focuses on finding the 7th dragon den to help their cause and to see if they know the cure. But now they're 4-0 with not a single clue of where the Irids might be. And as the leader of this mission, the weight of failure weighs so heavily on Violet's shoulders. She's had to stay strong and steadfast in her belief that they will find the Irids. But now doubt has her in a chokehold, and she's terrified of the repercussions of their failure. Not finding the Irids equals losing this war. They are that outnumbered. They are that out of their depths with the Venin.
With yet another isle turning up dry and not wanting to stay here for a minute longer, it's time to hit the road. But Marin and Kat cut in. We have to burn Traeger and Scylla's bodies. Not here on Zelna, though. No part of them should remain here. I agree. So there's a dozen of uninhabited minor isles within a day's flight. Pick one, even if it deviates them off course for a few days.
Because as Kat insists, Traeger and his griffin are worth losing a few days of the mission. They decide to make the most of the deviation of their route, though. While Flyer and Griffin burn and are offered up to Malik, some of their group can split and fly over minor isles to search for the Irids. Then, when they're ready, they can depart for Loisum, the Isle of the Goddess of Love. Honestly, I think this is a great plan. They've kind of been thinking like humans. They are humans. Of course, they have to check the main isles in case the Irids are there, but the deserted minor isles are where I would feel like the seventh dragon den that left human civilization would more likely be. As awful as the reasoning is for them to have to go to the minor isles, it's also the necessary push they need to explore uncharted territory.
So they will fly northwest from dawn until the middle of the night before they reach an isle that is deserted. It is time for travel math. South of the equator, dawn is on average at 6 a.m. So 6 a.m. to roughly 12 a.m. is 18 hours, or 572.4 miles, or 921.2 kilometers. Or, because we're in Zelna and I compared them to France earlier, it is the distance from Paris to Nice, which takes the SNCF train around 6 hours.
Taking into account how vast this part of the world is, I can only imagine how many minor isles there really are. The map our crew has from, I believe, Corden only identifies so many isles. But as they find out, the isle they're on is not identified by the map. And this particular isle does indeed have more magic than there was on Zelna, which I assume is because an old volcano is on this isle, and as Taryn notes, they're about an hour's flight from sizable cliffs. But there is also the possibility that more magic means closer to hatching grounds, specifically the Irids hatching grounds, like I was mentioning way earlier at the top of this episode. After they commend Traeger and Scylla's souls to Malik, and the flyers take turns watching over the fire for the rest of the night, as is custom when sending a soul off, it is time to make the most of this detour from their intended route. They come to the conclusion that there are hundreds of islands out this way, not just a couple dozen like the mapmakers recorded. So the plan is to search as many as they can, trying to track down the Irids by breaking into 5 groups. Violet strategically keeps the paired griffins to closer isles because they're exhausted and can't fly as far, and she pairs dragons with similar flight strengths, with the exception of Taryn and Sagail.
But what? Zayden and Violet aren't patrolling together? Correct. Violet paired Honeybear with Garrick for multiple reasons. Number 1, the very public reason is Taryn and Sagail can communicate again because they have magic. So if they are split up, they can talk over those long distance and keep each other in the know of what the hippity haps are. And number 2, the much more private reason, is now that there's magic beneath their feet. And as Zayden puts it, he might not even need it, but damn, it's tempting to pull from that source, especially knowing that if he just reached, he would be at full strength again. But he won't. Right, Zayden? True, Zayden, you won't, unless something triggers him. Words cannot describe my pride for Violet right now. At the beginning of this book, and actually later on this episode, there is no way she could have had this awareness around the possibility of Zayden channeling more. But now she's seen enough of Zayden on the ice to deduce what the common trigger is. Her. Which brings us to a little bit of actually Zayden in denial. He says, quote, "You're not a trigger. You're the only thing I can't fathom losing. Wielding to protect you has always been an instinct, but now it's uncontrollable." Zayden never wants anyone else to bear the weight of protecting him or saving him. And as he views it, that is his responsibility alone. But the reality is, Violet is thinking about it. And if she's not patrolling with him, she will be out of sight, hopefully out of mind. And that way it'll lessen the chances of him getting triggered and channeling. And worst case scenario, if something sets Zayden off, Garrick also has Serum. But while Zayden accepts this flight pairing, not including him and Violet, Taryn is a little more pissed about it. After weeks of not being able to communicate with his mate, he is so mad that they will not be together. Which his line of, quote, "I'll say the same when you've been unable to communicate with your mate for weeks and are deprived by choice," followed by Violet's, quote, "Humans don't mate." This has led to an alarm moments from the fandom. Are the only mates in this world dragons? Or is this uncontrollable connection with Xaden and Violet also a mating bond? In a Reddit article by a poster who has since deleted their account, so I'm so sorry I cannot properly credit you, but they pointed out how twice in Onyx Storm, Taryn refers to Xaden as Violet's mate. All of this being very on brand for Rebecca Yarros, who typically has meanings on meanings on meanings on Easter eggs. With Violet and Xaden having bonded a pair of already mated dragons, we don't know how two mated dragons affect the two riders attached to them, other than sometimes having the ability of being able to speak mind to mind, which Taryn in Fourth Wing says is a great advantage in battle. But these two also have some extra advantages. Suzel commented on this post, bringing up how Violet and Xaden can share memories with each other, something all dragons can do, but as Taryn puts it in Fourth Wing, quote, "A memory has never been shared outside of a mating bond." And then in Chapter 4 in Onyx Storm, Violet and Xaden question whether or not it's an intrinsic thing. So Rebecca Yarros is literally asking us to start questioning why they have this very specific ability. Now, this could be because they are both types of intrinsics, but it also could be a mate thing. Back to what the original poster was saying. They mentioned how this all might come into play around Xaden's soul. If Violet is the extra pull for him, and according to Xaden's ending chapter, quote, "The bond between Violence and me is the kind of magic that has no explanation." What if their bond is his tether to this world? It's not only their love that keeps him from turning fully at the end of Onyx Storm. Instead, it is her, his mate, being the literal anchor. He cannot lose his soul fully because it's tethered to her through the mating bond. Now, let's get into Lexi and I's thoughts around this theory, because personally, I like it. I could absolutely see this happening with the biggest, most boldest underlined asterisk. There is a huge trope in romantasy and fantasy around fated mates. And then there's more mates in the, I'm going to call it chosen sense. I feel like Taryn and Sigale are more of the chosen mates. It's a bond deeper than love, but they still chose to have it. If this is a mate situation between Xaden and Violet, I 1000% think that it will be more of the I choose you Pikachu, and we also have this super deep connection, more so than the fated kind, which it does tend to be, I'm not going to say overused, but it is very common in romantasy. Yes. If this were to happen, this I choose you Pikachu, I don't see it like being a surprise, your mates, like they're already in love and now they're married, even though they're not currently in the same place. They don't need that extra label connection unless it is going to come into play some way to save Xaden's soul. So I am very open to it. I think we're supposed to be asking these questions given the Easter eggs and the memory sharing stuff, but I don't think it will be cut and dry mates as we're used to in other romantasy books. I wonder if some of the mating bond from Taryn and Sigale even rubbed off onto Xaden and Violet, and it's going to help them in the next book, maybe with their long distance and being able to communicate. I don't know, because it does seem like mating bonds do strengthen over time. Yep. So I don't know if that would actually really help them here. The one thing that really has me leaning into this theory is the memory sharing connection. Xaden and Violet were already wondering why they can share memories, and Taryn was the one back in book 1 who connected that skill to mating bonds, even though it's not exclusive to it.
We are so aligned with all of this. Yes, I definitely think there is more to Xaden and Violet's bond than we currently know, but just like you, I don't think that it's a human mating bond in the way we're familiar with in the romantasy genre. And I'll be honest, I hope it's not, because as much as I love that fated mates trope, I also love in the Empyrean series that it doesn't have the fated mates element to it, because the soul deep level of love that Xaden and Violet share feels all the more special because they're not those kind of mates. They choose each other. They choose to work for this soul deep love and connection that they do have. But like you're saying, if we shift our definition of mates from what we know with Fae and such such, I can see a version of this, where it is that soul deep level of love that, for lack of a better word, connects your souls. And I love what you're saying about how that could tie into saving Xaden's soul. There is a reason we did not go to the Isle of the Goddess of Love, and I really think that there are going to be some answers, and especially tie into Xaden, that we just can't even fathom yet. So Violet and Xaden are already connected more than your usual couple with the bond of their dragons, and now we know that they are both types of intensics, which heightens their mind-to-mind connection. There is even the argument that they are both full intensics, which is something that no one has ever experienced before in this whole world, at least that is on the record. And I think that's where this concept of mates can stem from. Is it an official mating bond? Maybe not. But is it heightened because of their signets, their dragon bonds, and their emotional connection? 1000%, which in this world may be the definition of a mate.
I have to say, this journey through the Isles has me thinking about the beach. I'm always thinking about the beach. Vacation season is on its way. All of this to say, I'm treating myself to some luxury upgrades I deserve with Quince high-quality travel essentials at fair prices.
Quince has so many great options, like lightweight European linen styles from $30, washable silk tops, and comfy lounge sets. They also have premium luggage options and stylish tote bags to carry it all. The best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us, the customers. It is about to be the time of year for my favorite shorts, which are, yes, Quince shorts. They're these black shorts, are super cute. They've got pockets. They're super comfortable. I love them so much, and I will probably wear them until the day I die.
For your next trip, treat yourself to the luxe upgrades you deserve from Quince. Go to quince.com/FFG for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/FFG to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/FFG. So the other four groups leave for their respective Isle searches, and it's just Iotrum, Taryn, and a sleeping Andarna with Violet and Riddick watching over the remaining fire for Traeger and Scylla. First of all, I love that Violet paired herself with Riddick. He's here as her personal guard, so it absolutely makes sense that she put the two of them together out of respect for Riddick's purpose on this quest squad. The timing should work out well for the fire to burn out, because it is customary for someone to watch over the fire the whole time when burning a soul to Malik, and for Andarna to get some much needed rest after all this flight travel before this pairing heads off to their quadrant of Isle searching. But then, the ground shudders! The volcano is going to erupt! Wait, no, that's not it. Sand starts flying, water is spraying, and it's not Iotrum! And what's this? Fresh dragon tracks? But Taryn and Iotrum are somewhere else on the Isle. Love how Violet steps in front of sleeping Andarna's neck to protect her from her most vulnerable spot. What great foreshadowing for what's about to go down with what Violet will be accused of and how far from the truth that is. And then the air shimmers and solidifies into sky blue scales. Dragons! What's more, dragons that were just camouflaged and are now showing themselves right in front of Violet. This can only mean one thing. The Irids have found us! The gasp I gasped when this was all unfolding.
The way I would have peed my pants if I was just going about my day and then a dragon materializes right in front of me. Like, I would have keeled over dead right then and there. I would just drop dead.
6 dragons that rivaled the size of Sigale, so very big dragons but not the biggest like Taryn, materialize on the beach and they lower their heads to eye our crew. Now before we dive into this long anticipated intro, I want to take a quick moment and go through why the Irids have chosen to appear here and now, because we'll find out they've watched some of this journey and have come to the conclusion that it is not peace they seek but rather victory. It makes me wonder what part of their journey they've seen. Did the Irids see the 3 fight in Umbriel and know that Violet wielded lightning? Did they follow them to Hedotus and watch the whole poisoning fiasco? Or Zelna, where they had to say thank you after their friend was shot through the heart?
Given their victory over peace statement that they're about to make, I am assuming at a minimum they saw Hedotus. She did have Andarna as leveraged there to use as a weapon should things go to shit, and they did. However, there are some people who think that the glowing eye on the Dune statue in Umbriel was not Andarna, and instead it was an Irid watching over them, and that I could absolutely see. So I could see it having been since Umbriel.
The Irids are making an appearance here to speak with Andarna, though as it turns out, they will also be passing major judgment on Violet and Navarian civilization. They'll explain that yes, they have an isle, and there are hundreds of Irids, but they do not live with humans. The Irids do not bother with humankind, and while we'll explore their philosophy in detail very soon, I really do think that they've been waiting for our crew to be far enough away from other humans to show themselves. All the more reason for fate to take our crew away from their route of the main isles. The Irids never would have made an appearance near human civilization, so it would seem they've held out for the better opportunity, which is sad to think that if Quest Squad had taken the minor isles into account before Zelna, Traeger may still be alive. They've mentioned searching the minor isles before, but quite frankly, they seem too vast and daunting, so first priority for our crew became the main isles.
I also understand that. They also wanted to get armies for the continent, and if they're talking to people, you can ask them, like, hey, have you seen any Irids perchance? So I understand the logic here for sure.
I assume that after they would have gone to Loisum, they would have gone back and then hit some of the minor isles. And that's probably when they would have realized how many more isles there are than what just appears on the map.
Exactly. And they would have been gone way longer than 3.5 weeks. The one directly in front of Violet flares its nostrils, and a slide whistle sound, starting low and going high in less than a heartbeat, sounds off in her head. After all the horrid noise fills her ears, Violet hears a "Hello, human." Within a few moments, Violet and Riddick, with also the slide whistle treatment, will be able to not only hear all Irids communicate, but Riddick will also be able to hear Andarna too. It's unclear if Riddick can also hear Tern, and we don't get a mention of Iotrim talking into Violet's head, so I'm assuming the non-Irid bonds are normal. The only humans who can hear the non-Irid dragons are the bonded humans, but the dragons can talk to all of the other winged creatures in the vicinity. We learned back in Fourth Wing that it is a big time no-no for dragons to speak to the humans they're not bonded to, which is why when Andarna started speaking into Violet's mind on the flight field after threshing, Violet was like, what the fuck?
I'll even ask, is it possible for dragons to speak into humans' minds who aren't their bonded, of obviously besides Irids? That was Violet assuming it's a no-no, you're not supposed to do that, but it really seems like it's just not possible from everything we've picked up on since then.
For a group of 6 Irids to suddenly be able to create a full-blown group call is quite unheard of. I do wonder, however, if this way of being all able to communicate will be used in a future battle, where all dragons and griffins and riders and flyers would be able to talk. To be quite honest, that feels way too chaotic.
That makes me so overstimulated just thinking about that scenario. That's like the group text that just keeps blowing up. And it's like, oh my God, go away!
That's the group text you mute within 5 minutes of being added to the group text.
Yes!
When asked how they speak their language, one of the male Irids replies back, quote, "We are magic." You know how we asked Rebecca Yarros what percentage of Violet's signet power we've seen, and she said 10%? I want to know what percentage of Irid's magic we have seen so far. Before we get into this major discussion, let's take one moment and look at who is on this page, Irid specifically. The male directly in front of Violet, this is the one who asks Andarna to tell her tale. There is a female to his right named Dason, and then another male to her right. Then there's a female to the left of the middle dragon, whose voice is as snappy as a school teacher's and whose scales flicker to green. She's got a lot of questions to ask, and she's also got a lot of judgment to back up those questions. Then there's another male whose horns are similar to Andarna's to her left. We will come to learn that this is Leothin. Fun fact, the name Leothin is of Irish origin, derived from the Irish word liahin, which means gray in English. Don't really know what that could symbolize, but I think we're going to find out more in book 4. And then there's another unnamed Irid who is just not really shared about. We don't know if they're on the left or the right.
I love how Terran goes into full protective girl dad mode. It's not surprising whatsoever. These 6 dragons are completely unknown, unpredictable, and staring down Violet. Terran claims Violet as his human and threateningly swings his Morningstar tail and snaps his teeth at the Irids to warn them not to fuck with his bonded.
Together, these 6 Irids are wanting to talk to Andarna. She is the Criterion, after all. They've probably been waiting hundreds of years to see if this quote-unquote experiment worked. More on this in a moment. Hey, we've been wanting to talk to you is music to Andarna's ears. Since the beginning of this book, she has been holding her kind on a sort of pedestal, believing that if they will be everything she wants them to be and more, her family, who will see her as one of their own. But that begins to go a little sideways when the sassy school teacher voice reels back with a, "What have you done with your tail?" Andarna is a scorpion tail. Her tail manifested out of need and choice back in Iron Flame.
Rebecca has said that Andarna has a scorpion tail because Violet was poisoned by the Venon's green-tipped dagger and almost died from these injuries. So it's my understanding that poison was top of mind for Andarna as she entered her fitful, dreamless sleep.
I love that Andarna's tail manifested because of Violet, and Violet's second signet manifested because she needed to be with Andarna. Oh. This being one of the common dragon tails, sword, dagger, club, morningstar, and scorpion, Andarna's like, nothing. I chose this tail. When the dragons go through their dreamless sleep and transition from juvenile to adolescent, they choose their tail based on what they need. Because these dragons are training for war, they all morph into a weapon tail to better help them in battle, as we've seen demonstrated on the page multiple times in badass manners. But this is where, without knowing, things do go downhill. Violet peeks around the Irid's tails, and they're all feather tails, even though none of them are juveniles anymore, because these Irids have no needs for the weapons that tails are on the continent.
Assuming that these Irids are at least one generation after the Irids from the Great War, I'm assuming that the Great War's generation of Irids did not pass down this information that the other dragons have weapons for tails. It also makes me wonder if the other dragons only manifested these weapons for tails during the Great War, or after their kind started bonding humans. This also concerns me about what other knowledge from the Great War the Irids did not pass down to future generations.
Like how to cure venom, maybe? And I did not think about any of this, but I think it all boils down to the question, how long do Irids live? Because they are magic, I can't help but think about venom too. They have a lot of magic within them. They live longer. So because Irids are magic, do they live longer than the other dragons? But alas, we do not know. Seeing that one of their own, Andarna, has chosen a tail that is a weapon, this is an immediate tell that things have not changed since the Irids left the continent.
We will come to learn what these Irids believe and, subsequently, how they bestow judgment. Their breed is born for peace, not violence like others, like the other dragon breeds. They do not believe in fighting and hold the concept of peace in the highest esteem. They abhor war and weapons. It was this horror that they fled from 600 years ago. Which, I'll be honest, I did not have this mindset on my bingo card from the Irids. It also makes so much sense because one of the big, I'll say, complaints about Fourth Wing was how violent it was and how much unnecessary killing there is. And it kind of came back to bite them when the Flyers were introduced to the story in Iron Flame, and we talked a lot about that during our deep dive of Iron Flame, but now we see it from a dragon perspective, where they're really judging these humans because they don't believe that it's necessary when they're within these wards. There is peace to be had, and again, just creating such a contrast from what Rebecca set us up to understand as normal in Fourth Wing. And as noble as this peaceful perspective is, it illustrates that life is not so black and white. The Irids only believe in peace. But like Andarna will soon press, what happens when that peace is threatened? The Irids judge that Quest Squad is seeking victory instead of peace. But if peace is threatened, isn't victory necessary to have it at all? As Andarna will say to them, they have the privilege to only focus on peace, not how it is won or earned or fought for, because peace is exactly what Pormiel and Navarre have been fighting for recently together. Okay, Navarre might have an asterisk next to it, but you get my point. Everyone wants peace, but how is that possible when Venom are invading and attacking and killing? The irony is that peace in the situation can only be achieved by fighting against evil and standing up for what is right. I'll even argue that Violet and them, they're trying to find the cure to Venom. Now, while for her, it's obviously for Xaden, but Riddick will say too, where it's like, well, our whole defeat them by curing them is not going to work out. That is a version of trying a peaceful approach rather than just killing all the venom.
Well, and we'll learn that the Irids are willing to sit back and watch the venom take over everything in the land, drain both the land and the people dry to eventually have peace. It is so lazy and passive is what I look at it. Versus Navarre and Quest Squads fight for peace now.
As far as we know, they have lived in peace and harmony for the past 600 years, with no threats to their way of life or interruption in this peace they preach and firmly believe is the only way of life, leading Andarna to eventually say the iconic line, quote, "You preach peace while only having known its privilege." It's one of my favorite lines of this entire book, and I have repeated it multiple times, and I'm sure I will continue doing so too. In other words, what would the Irids do if their way of life, their very existence, was threatened? If peace was ripped away from them?
I do also want to point out from what it sounds, the Irids live on an isle where it is only their kind. It is an entirely like-minded society that they are not willing to let others who have a different way of thinking come in and disrupt the bubble that they have found for themselves.
The Irids ask Andarna what, quote, they've done to her, and what has led her to choose this weapon for a tale. What they're not outright asking, and what they're really judging here, is the state of the civilization. They left Andarna behind as a criterion to see if humans have evolved into a peaceful society. And this isn't off to a good start with Andarna choosing a weapon for a tale. So let's hear the story so they can pass judgment. Story time, everybody. Let's all sit down and listen closely. Andarna, however, is too caught up in her excitement of finally finding her family that she believes these questions are out of curiosity instead of judgment. So she launches into her full story, starting with the years she blinked in and out of consciousness in her shell. I can only imagine how much she has rehearsed this interaction in her head and how happy she is to share her story with her family, catch them up on her as she seeks acceptance, support, and connection with them. Like all this flying that they've been doing, I bet she's just been practicing this in her head.
The fact that we don't get every minute of Andarna's story, all from her perspective, is just criminal. I want every second. I don't care if it's multi-hour story time. I want all of it.
All I picture is Andarna, like, toothless, acting this out as if she's Olaf from Frozen 2.
Like, you know that? I can't remember which How to Train Your Dragon it is, but it's when Toothless is flirting with the other dragon, and he, like, has his wings all tucked up, and he's like prancing around, and, and Hiccup is just like, ah!
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I have a quick question, because there's the school teacher voice dragon who asks why she would participate in Harvest. It's interesting that they call it Harvest, which is what the Griffin Flyers call their bonding. Why would they call it harvest versus threshing?
So that's a good question, and it led me to look up the definition of threshing. And it means to separate seed from a harvested plant, which is pretty much what the dragons do with the humans on threshing. They separate the riders from the cadets who, well, don't become riders. So it's kind of like the more violent dragon version of Harvest that's evolved after the Irids left.
Okay, I can accept that.
The best I can think of it. Yeah. When Andarna gets to the part about how she used her gift of stopping time to save Violet from the Unbondeds attacking her last year, the Irids are extra judgy. And that's saying something since they are very judgy through this whole thing. One of the females clarifies, quote, "You used your juvenile gift for a human?" And Andarna pushes back, "For my human. She is part of me as I am of her. You undervalue our connection." This is major foreshadowing for when one of these Irids, Leothin, will treat the dragon and rider bond so casually and how it can be broken. They haven't bonded with humans, but because they are magic, they act all knowing in this department. But the truth is, Irids don't understand the bond and the deep connection between dragon and rider, which leads me to believe Andarna and Violet's bond won't be fully severed, even though it seems like it is. And it's foreshadowing that deep down, Andarna knows her bond with Violet is far more important than the Irids could ever fathom or give them credit for. So while she'll leave with them because she is lured to be with her family and to learn from them, her love and connection with Violet will bring her back, and it can't possibly be fully severed because that's not really how their bond works, no matter what the Irids say.
Well, and hence why Violet can still dreamwalk when she is, quote, no longer bonded to Andarna. Also, Mira asks Violet, how did you supplement the loss of magic? And Violet's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think that's because she didn't need to, because Andarna wasn't fully gone. And yes, Taryn did help her a lot in that department, but I don't think she needed to because that wasn't fully depleted.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that her bonding and Irid, there are a lot more layers to it than we know right now. I also am going to throw it back out there where Andarna did channel her gift of time stopping into her. And while I don't think that gift is still there, I think there might be an extra layer of connection between them because Andarna did give her direct dragon power to Violet at one point.
Well, and I think it also is just calling back to all those moments where Violet is, you know, she's laying on Andarna. She goes to Andarna Darna after in Fourth Wing when she learns that Mira is okay. She goes to the one place she knows she's safe, which is in Darna's arms, quote unquote.
Yep.
And I think all of that has been priming us for this moment where their bond cannot be severed.
As Darna continues her story, she shares how Violet channeled her power in battle, and that's an extra big no-no for these Irids. This is already the reason juvenile dragon Feathertails and Navarre are kept secret, to prevent humans from taking advantage of their power. And while we readers know Violet is different, the Irids don't have that context. So as far as they're concerned, this is exactly what dragons avoid, a human using a young dragon's powers as a weapon for their own violent gain.
It genuinely breaks my heart how much Andarna is clearly trying to make them believe that she is the most dragon of dragons. She's telling the story in a way that highlights her ferocity and her ruthlessness that Navarian dragons prize above all else. I 100% think you're right that she's been practicing this speech, which kills me. But as Violet says, it's not going as well as Andarna believes, because she thinks she's presenting the story in a way that would make them proud of her and overjoyed to accept her. But it turns out it's quite the opposite. By the time Andarna's story comes to a close hours later, the Irids are eerily silent, and they share that they need a moment to speak, just the six of them. That's not a very good sign. What's a worse sign? After a few moments, 3 of the Irids launch into the sky and leave, essentially signaling, yeah, this isn't worth our time. This is a lost cause. But 3 do stay and return to the group to give them their thoughts. The ones that stayed are Leothin, the female to the right, Dason, and the one from the center who scared the shit out of Violet, meaning the school teacher, the male on the right who barely really said anything, and the one who said nothing at all left. The tell-all question from Andarna floods out of her. Did she pass the test? Is she fit to go visit her family's den? After the 600 years of waiting, is she finally welcomed to her family? And the answer is not quite what she expected, because Andarna was never the one being tested if she passed or failed. It was Violet. And without even knowing, she failed. Capital F. Violet is not someone who really takes failure sitting down. She's rarely failed in her life, and each time she did, she was able to pick herself back up and keep going. We saw this predominantly last book with the Wardstone and Iron Flame. But this is different. Those moments were in her control, and the pass-fail lay solely on her shoulders. But now she is being tested for the entirety of the human race.
Violet has already felt shame and guilt for this war's consequences directly impacting Andarna. And now here are some of her worst inner thoughts on full display, echoing back to her that yes, she has failed her dragon and she is to blame.
And the consequence of her possibly failing this mission equals the entire continent losing the war against the Venin and her losing Xaden. Like, this is her worst nightmare coming to pass.
As the Irids explain, Andarna was left behind as the criterion. She was the measurement of the human's growth from 600 years ago, the indication of whether society could choose tranquility and harmony with all living things, assumably after the Great War. The Irids explain that they hoped the Irid they left behind, Andarna, would return to her kind and share that humans had evolved, that they had blossomed under the Wardstone and no longer used magic as a weapon. So much to unpack with this, but real quickly, they say Wardstones, plural. Does this mean that the Orician Wardstone, or even a different one that we don't know about yet, once had fully active wards, but perhaps soon after the Irids left, it was deactivated somehow, some way, whether by a Venin attack or something else? However, according to Chapter 7's epigraph from Lyra's journal, quote, all who channel from dragon and griffin alike should flourish under the wards, and now Orisha will be that haven should one of the others ever return. This makes it seem like the Orician Wardstone was not lit by an Irid, so therefore it never was lit. Just something I noticed.
You're a genius. Oh my God. I saw this in the outline and my jaw was like on the floor. You're so smart. After leaving 600 years ago, the Irids hoped that humans under the solace of the wards would put behind their bloodthirsty needs and instead find tranquility and harmony in all living things and put down their swords as a result, both metaphorically and literally. And not only because all humans still use, major air quotes there, dragons as an instrument of warfare, but also because Violet apparently took advantage of an Irid's youth and made Andarna into exactly that, a weapon, when Irids are born for peace, not violence. That means not only are you still violent, but you are also manipulating those who are supposed to bring peace into violence. With the knowledge that we have as readers, this is a wildly unfair assessment. No, Violet did not take advantage of Andarna. Everything Andarna did, she chose for herself, sometimes against Violet and Terran's wishes. But also the entire human race is being judged in a single moment for not laying down in the face of danger. They don't have the privilege of tranquility that the Irids speak of because they live under constant threat of being drained by a venom.
So yes, I absolutely agree with you with all of that. And it's interesting because if we take the last, I'll call it 50 years out of the equation, Navarre and Poromil have been fighting with each other. And from Navarre's propaganda standpoint, they are trying to be peaceful, but it's Poromil who keeps attacking them, who keeps trying to get to their borders and all of that. And even though there is a whole reason behind all of that, Navarre is technically in their own way laying down and refusing to acknowledge the real problem. That is their concept of peace. And guess where it has led them? To this. So there's no possible way for anybody to win. It is all a big lose-lose situation. And again, the Irids have the privilege of not even being able to fathom such consequences for their own kind.
Well, it again goes back to the root of the problem here. It's the Venom and their choices that they've made as Venom to attack and seek more power. And through that means a lot of killing and draining of people. So Navarre, and I'll just say Quest Squad right now, is blamed for the choices that the Venom have made and the humans' natural human instinct to want to survive. The humans are not fully to blame here, because the Irids turn their attention to pass judgment on the dragons who gift their humans with powers that are used for danger. Before we get into the incredibly ominous line about Violet's signet from Andarna, Riddick mentions how, quote, "that's not how signets work." And he's right. Dragons don't gift humans with powers unless you're Violet and you got the gift of time from Andarna last year, but that is no longer a thing, at least as far as we know. This line seems really suspicious to me because they're not talking to Violet and referring to the Andarna situation. They're talking about all signets that are currently in the present of. So ice, lightning, and, Violet's second signet, which they refer to very ominously, which I'll get to in a second, because they don't know how it works since they've never been bonded. It's, again, going back to what you were saying earlier about how they believe they are all-knowing, when in actuality, they have a lot of knowledge gaps in this situation. How interesting. The wording around gift here, though, feels very specific to me. Do you think this is foreshadowing for the dragons to, I'm going to call it gift their humans with the additional power so that they have that extra power in the final book/battle? Because remember, all dragons have a baby gift and then they have an adult gift that is completely separate from Signet. So we don't even know what Terran's power is.
Yeah, I'm still confused about how all of that works because I feel like we would have seen it by now with Terran. So I wonder if it's just a different way that they draw upon power. And when they're babies, it is an actual specific power. I don't know yet. But to answer your question, I'm kind of leaning no, only based on what Rebecca has said about needing to check power. And I think about this being another demonstration of the era is just not understanding how bonds and signets work. I feel like it would potentially cheapen Violet's whole hero's journey and all of that if she just gets Terran's power to then channel through and kind of like have that extra boost to beat the big bad. I like to think that there will be more creative ways, and especially just with what Rebecca has said about needing to make sure there are limitations on people's powers here. But what you're saying about this being another demonstration of the era is not understanding how bonds and signets work, I think that's absolutely true. They view this whole dragon and rider relationship as very transactional, whereas there's actually so many more layers and complexities of magic at work. And I think back to the Great War, and it was initially pretty transactional. The humans and the dragons agreed to bond with one another so that they could each help their respective societies, right? And so that kind of seems to be the era's still focus when there has been 600 years since then of evolution. And again, all of this is foreshadowing for after Andarna breaking the bond, and Violet will still be able to use her second signet because there is so much unknown about these bonds, especially that the Irids don't know.
Interesting, because I actually think that this is absolutely foreshadowing for a future battle. I don't think we would have gotten the very subtle information about dragons as adults having a dragon gift and then never having it come back into play. So I definitely think this will come into play in a future book. I hope I don't see it being like a Deus Ex Machina kind of moment at all, but I do see it having some kind of extra oomph. All right, let's get into the line that is spoken by the male dragon from the center, which just caused us all to spiral. Quote, "And you, our very hope, have handed this human something far more dangerous to wield. Haven't you?" Oh my God, so many questions here. First, hearing this line before we knew Violet's second signet was heart-stopping. I remember you and I both looked at each other and like our souls left our bodies.
I remember that so vividly. I fully expected her second signet reveal to be the next chapter. Like, I was mentally preparing myself. It was so exciting. But I actually kind of love how Rebecca just dangled this in front of us. This was the moment also that I will admit that I was like, well, shit, I think Nicole might be right about her being an intense.
This was the moment that I was like,
description about that.
This was the moment that I was like, oh, shit, I think I'm right. I got so smug. And then it all crumbled and fell in a few chapters. But let's get into the high level of this. Emphasis on high level, because in 2 episodes, we're about to go deep in this. We will learn that Violet's second signet from Andarna is dream walking, quote unquote, which is a type of intrinsic and therefore very dangerous, especially given that Violet could walk into anyone's dreams and meddle her little heart out.
Yes, and when people are sleeping, they cannot have their shields up. So that is what makes it extra dangerous, is that people's shields don't matter for Violet's signet, which is completely unheard of. And also, friends, in case you did not listen to our Romantasy BookCon live show recording, I let the audience decide whether this dream walking counts as Nicole winning the bet. And the resounding answer was yes, it does count. So we have changed the answer, and Nicole does win this bet, even though she did say that she did not think it was dream walking. But you know what? Shout out to my husband, who cheered super duper loud for it not counting. That is my supportive partner right there, because he knew how passionately I felt about this.
Shout out to every other person in the room who very, very passionately agreed with me. Thank you very much. When we think about something that is much more dangerous than wielding pure power, it feels like walking into people's minds via dreaming doesn't quite cover that category. We know, however, from Rebecca Yarros that we've only seen 10% of Violet's second signet. And while we're not going to get too far into it, because again, in 2 episodes, we are going to be going balls deep into this theory, it is this line from the Middle Irid that makes many of us believe that this is not simply just dream walking, but instead it might be something along the lines of mind walking. But like I said, we're not getting there yet. We will cover that in 2 episodes when we get the full, at least the 10% download of Violet's second signet. Wrapping this up though, I gotta say poor Violet, because she was convinced that she didn't have a second signet from Andarna. And this type of info drop would have been the biggest mindfuck. And it would have felt so much like, you know more about me than I do. Like, it's not really helping the whole Irids chill your egos.
But in all this conversation between Andarna's riveting story and the Irids' judgment, there is the big reason Quest Squad has been searching for the 7th Dragon Den. Quote, "That's why we're here, to ask if you'll come home to fight with us, to see if the knowledge was passed down of how the Venin were defeated during the Great War, or if you know how to cure them." Real quickly here, I love how Andarna calls it home. She's actually corrected herself several times on calling it the continent, but here she does say home when she's fighting passionately in defense for it. However, this call for help does not sway the Irids in the slightest. All they are willing to focus on is how the society has failed. And Andarna being a weapon that Violet has essentially wielded and taken advantage of is proof of that.
The reason the Irids won't come to their aid truly boils down to the one sentence we've been harping on for the past 30 minutes. Quote, "It is not peace you seek, but victory." To the Irids, those are 2 different things, whereas to our squad, it is one and the same. But quite frankly, the Irids don't give a flying fuck. They have been detached from this world with the threat of the Venin for over 600 years. And because they aren't living in it, it is an abstract threat to them, not a real one. They also chose to leave before, or their ancestors did. Again, we don't know how long Irids live. So if anything, they are continuing the plan that has been 600 years in motion. Leave the continent alone and continue to live on our Isle of Peace. They have no ties to the continent now that Andarna is being woefully rejected. And why would they help this nonstop war machine that is the human race? If they come to help, are they any better than the dragons who the humans use for warfare? They value peace above all else. And by going back to war, that would be putting their values to the side. So the TLDR of this, not their circus, not their monkeys. So have fun dying off because, quite frankly, fighting for them didn't work 600 years ago. So why would it work now?
The Irids even go a step further by saying perhaps the people should die because they are incapable of living in peace. As far as the Irids are concerned, humans had their chance, and look how little they've learned. Maybe civilization deserves a clean slate, where the Venin take over the land. Then, when the Venin are faced with starvation, one of two things will happen. Number one, they'll die off and the land will regenerate. Or number two, the Venin will confront the evils they have become and change. This conversation is so fucking meta, oh my goodness. But there's a key word. The Venin may be able to change. This is exactly talk of a cure that Violet had been hoping for. So Andarna presses the Irids on how Venin may be able to change if the answer to the cure is evolving.
We gotta talk about this. First, I want to address how this does prove how little the Irids know about the Venin. If they believe offspring outlive the Venin, they do not know the immortality of, assuming, the higher level Venin. But let's run with this for a moment. What if two Venin created a Venin spawn and it is a full Venin from birth? But then again, this Irid argument is not effective because it would only be able to survive by pulling from the source, but that wouldn't fix things because they would continue until the continent was drained, and then they need to find more options, like, for instance, going to the Isles and draining the humans on the Isles. So if anything, it's just continuing on the pattern. What if a Venin and a human have a baby together? And I will go ahead and say that there is a theory that this human Venin hybrid is actually Dane. And that's why he has such a well of power. Lexi looks so, you have fun theory pasted all over your face. So for example, Daddy Atos is a Venin. Mama Atos isn't a Venin, therefore she's human. They made Dane, who is human, but with the Venin well of power. I'm not gonna lie, I love this theory.
Tell you what, this is a more likely theory than some of the other ones I've heard you talk about today alone. I know that there's another very popular theory that Lilith was a Venin, and all sorts of theories that stem from that, but that Violet is still part Venin. This theory was very popular with why her hair was silver, and now that we know that's because of Dune, there is still a lot of theories that surround it. Anyway, I think that this is a lot more likely than two Venin having a baby.
But this is the only option I could see that the Irids are saying as like, this could cure the entire, this could lead to eventual peace, This is the only way I could see working. The child would have a huge well of power and be able to rise up against the Venin previous generation. Again, it doesn't really solve the whole situation since it would be provoked by violence in the first place. So all of this to say, this, again, is showing just how this is not our problem. The Irids are acting. The offspring evolving is not really an option because of how long Venin live and how the offspring would most likely follow in their parents' footsteps, at least a decent amount, again, psychologically speaking. I'm fucking furious at the Irids for even saying this is an option when it just shows their ignorance and how little they give a fuck about helping. I also want to point out that some people think that this, like, confront your inner demons and choose change that the Irids are also talking about could be foreshadowing. We've discussed how this could be, we'll call it a Voldemort situation. When you feel true remorse for what you've done, you can put your soul back together. And I'm not ruling it out, but I'll just say, I don't see Jack fucking Barlow choosing this option.
However, when outright asked whether evolving is the cure to Venin, one of the female Irids responds, there is no cure. Through the pages, I can hear the wind go out of Violet as if she's punched in the gut. Finding a cure for Zadine has been her number one goal for months now, and she has risked everything for every last possibility to discover the cure. All the research, gaining access to books, traveling to the Isles, and so far, it's been dead end after dead end. The Irids have been her last hope and the one she and Andarna have been counting on the most. But apparently, no. Because according to the Irids who are magic, it's not possible to have a cure. The female explains that it isn't a trade of the souls. The soul is not kept by the earth. No. Instead, this power exchange kills the soul one piece at a time. You cannot cure what is killed and no longer in existence.
Also, I can't help but think of there is no cure, there is only control, because we've heard that sentence before. So in my opinion, this really does come down to a question, and that is, do you believe what Dason is saying here? She mentions how the pieces of the Dark Wielder's soul that they trade is considered considered dead. And quote, death has no cure. Does it? If Neolin fully resurrected Brennan, then technically death would have a cure. So I'm actually going to rephrase the question. Does resurrecting a soul work as the venom cure?
Think that's what I'm leaning toward.
Me too.
And it makes me wonder more and more if Malik, the god of death, will play a role in the storyline, or at minimum, the goddess of love. To answer your question, I believe the Irids think they are telling the truth. They seem to know more about the Venom than others, which in and of itself seems to be proof that they were vital in defeating them during the Great War. It also makes me very curious if this is a future generation from the Irids who were in the Great War, which is what I'm kind of leaning toward, but maybe it was like their parent generation, so these Irids do live longer, but not quite as long as, 600 years. They have passed this information down, at least some of it, right? But these Irids are not all-knowing. We can already gather that by what they perceive as truth about bonds and signets, which is wrong. So I would take everything they have to say, including this about the venom, with a grain of salt. Death has no cure that we know of.
That we know of is doing a lot of heavy lifting, given how much foreshadowing there has been since book 1 around resurrection. And most of this foreshadowing involves Neolin, or is around Neolin conversation. From chapter 8 of Fourth Wing in Professor Kaori's class, quote, he, Neolin, attempted to use that power to revive a fallen rider, which didn't work because there is no signet capable of resurrection, and he depleted himself in the process. Then again in that chapter, Violet says, quote, resurrection is impossible. You know what else is mentioned not being possible in that exact chapter? Being a precog. Again, I wonder what would happen if someone has the signet power of both mending and siphoning. It seems like a pretty good resurrection power to me, Sloan.
Well, let's go back to the other part of Quest Squad's request to the Irids. Don't they know how the Dark Wielders were defeated in the Great War? Remember back at the beginning of Iron Flame, when Brennan said that there was a weapon that defeated the Venom 600 years ago, and they're actively searching for it. Since Andarna was uniquely able to burn a Venom, we, and our characters, have strongly wondered if the Irids are the weapon. And when this question about defeating the Dark Wielders is asked several times throughout this Irid encounter, not once do they give a direct answer. They say that apparently the Dark Wielders weren't actually defeated if they're here asking, which is so rude, and again, a non-answer.
Well, and again, it goes back to that, well, we, helped before and it didn't work, so why help again when we'll be here in another 600 years?
I don't think that this ending is ever going to be super peaceful, because that is not human nature. It's always seeking peace, and then when it's there, there's always other problems to come up with because it's not black and white, right? It's so layered. And then when Andarna follows up asking if the Irids are the key to defeating the Venom, the tallest male Irid calls them hopeless, leaving all of us still in limbo about whether the Irids are the key to defeating the Venom. They are. I am still absolutely, maybe more than so than ever, willing to die on that hill that they are. And the fact that they refuse to answer that question and redirect the conversation is proof. Because as we've discussed, the Irids do not deem the society worthy of help. So why would they even answer this question when they've made up their minds that they won't help? Bravo, Rebecca, for coyly avoiding this answer multiple times.
It seems like no common ground will be found between these two parties. So Andarna, being deemed Irid in name and scale only, she will not be accepted into their kind. This really makes me wonder what kind of magic Leothin had to pull back at Isle Irid to make sure that he could go get Andarna later on in this book. Like, how on earth?
I don't think he did.
You think he went against them?
Yeah, I think he kind of went a little rogue, because he said how it'll take several years for them to accept her and understand why he brought her here. But yeah, I don't know if they know.
Interesting. I assumed they knew, but they were like, go do your thing, Leothin. But like, they had to have some element of talk about it. Right now, this moment is just tragic for Andarna. Have I mentioned? For 600 years, Andarna was alone in her egg. She was already left behind by a family she didn't know. She has never felt part of something, so she constantly tried to blend in, and especially when she found solace and a mentor in Taryn. She lived basically all of Iron Flame in her black scale form because she wanted to be like Taryn. But we've known since Fourth Wing when she said, quote, it's hard to love a second home as much as a first, that her heart has always missed a piece, and she believed it would be with her kind, who this entire book she called family. Despite that 600 years of disconnection, she viewed them truly as that family, ones who would accept her and she would accept them. And now that hope that she's held for them is just being thrown back in her face as they say the words, "We cannot accept you." This was not even a possibility in her mind, even though Taryn wanted to prepare her for this possible outcome. Being ever the adolescent, she throws it in the Irid's face with a quote, "I wish I'd never met you," trying to make them feel the same heartbreak that she's experiencing. But the reality is they were curious about her, not holding out for her in the same way she was holding out for them. So now she is facing a rejection that she did not know she was holding her breath for 600 years to not have to face. I'm furious for Andarna.
I know. Well, and so I believe one of those Irids then takes off, leaving two of the Irids behind because they do still have a few more questions. They haven't completely written Andarna off yet. One of these dragons includes Leothin, who we will come to assume is a direct ancestor of Andarna's. The other is Dason. It doesn't quite sit right with them how quick the others have been to judge Andarna, especially because they understand it's not her fault that she is the way she is. She's a product of her environment, and maybe she shouldn't be punished for that. Yes, I agree. So they want to ask some more clarifying questions and come to their own conclusions before jumping to such hardline judgment.
But wait, because as the Irids allow Xaden and Garrick into the group chat with a slide whistle treatment, Dason recoils. How could you align yourselves with this abomination? Well, shit on a stick. When letting Xaden into the group chat call, his irises glow red. And uh-oh, they know he's a Venin. How did this happen, though? He didn't channel from the source. My best guess is that because Irids are magic, and when letting magic into someone, it causes their eyes to go red. But why doesn't this happen, like with his eyes going red, when Sigale channels power into him? I wonder if it's because Irids are pure magic, so it's more intense and more like it is from the source, because Venin channel raw magic from the earth, and maybe one of the reasons Irids are magic is because they channel pure magic from the sky. It also might be one of the reasons that they're a sky blue color. So basically, when you channel magic from an unlimited magic source, like the earth or the sky, that activates the Veninism. While we're on the topic of Irids channeling from the sky, Emily's theories on Instagram has probably one of my favorite theories we've seen out of Onyx Storm. I'll link the full Instagram theory in the show notes, so I'm just going to do a really abbreviated version of this one here. She talks about how the Irids do not obtain magic from the ground like the other dragons, but instead channel from the sky. Magic likes all things in balance, after all. This is why Violet specifically develops lightning, and it allows her to kill Venin, since she has access to the sky's power. It's also why Andarna's flames can kill Venin. It's all a matter of the original source of the magic. Also, and this is what made me go, wow, is that in the Fables of the Baron, which many people, including us, believe was written by Papa Sorrengail, one of the stories in the Fables of the Baron warns about, quote, the dangers of wielding from the ground instead of the skies. At the time, it's sounding like it's warning against channeling from the ground, like the Venin would, versus the sky, which is where dragons fly, in the sky. But what if it literally was wielding power from the sky? This also might be why Theophany wants the Irids. If they have more unlimited magical source from the sky, if the Venin drain the ground, that part is tapped. But what if a dragon with the magic of the sky, would it be the same? Or would it just be, again, that unlimited? So this theory boils down to a question that Emily poses. Will the OG dragon breeds return to wielding from the sky by the end of the series? And then would they have a more unlimited magical source, and writers might not have to worry about burnout? Sounds pretty good to me.
Do you think that means that Violet would not experience burnout if she's wielding her dreamwalking signet?
I do.
Interesting.
Because with Andarna being magic, if she does burn out, I think it would have to take a lot. Versus with Taryn, it does take a lot, but it's nowhere near the same amount.
Yeah, I never thought about that before. Whatever the reason for Xaden's eyes going red for a few moments, this is the nail in the coffin for these two last remaining Irids. These humans and Andarna have aligned themselves with a Venin, and they want absolutely no part in this abomination. I'll be honest, without all the context we readers have, I don't blame the Irids. This is the only time I am saying this about them. I'm assuming they left the continent in large part to escape any threat of the Venin. If I had to guess, they defeated them, And then everybody else with all their weapons and rah, 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 they're just like, we don't want anything to do with this. We just want to go live our happy little lives in peace, away from Venom, away from you, goodbye. And here is one right in front of them, teamed up with the very people trying to get the Irids on their side. This potential alliance was already hanging on by half a thread, like a thread of a thread, and now it's gone, along with their last hope, as these two Irids fade into the environment and take flight in refusal to continue this conversation.
Feeling a bone-splitting agony, and Darna shifts her scales to black, a color she feels like she's part of something being torn, and then to gold, her color of innocence, the color where apparently everything went wrong. And it's so sad. It's as if she is going back in time to a time where she could fix it all, and then she retreats into the forest. And Darna, you asshats for making my girl feel this way. I hate you.
Fast forward a little bit, Violet makes the executive decision that there is no point in flying for Loisum now. The two reasons they are going to these isles is to ally and bring armies to the continent to assist with the fighting and to search for the Irids. Well, they found the Irids and that didn't work out like they hoped, and Loisum does not have an army. So while they can establish a diplomatic tie, the Isle can't possibly help them win the war. And while this is a logical decision, and one I probably would have come to as well, especially for how emotionally beat up this quest squad is after Traeger's death and now the Irid's rejection, I can't help but wonder what Loisum has to offer that they might be missing out on. Chapter 49's epigraph says, quote, while most deities allow temple attendants to choose their timeline of service, only two require a lifetime of dedication, Dune and Loyal. For both war and love change souls irrevocably. I can't say that word, everybody. I'm sorry. I've been trying here for 5 minutes and I can't do it. You know what word I'm trying to say.
The word is irrevocably.
Thank you. We really don't know much about Loyal, but with this epigraph's reference to love changing the soul, Nicole, can you say this word again?
Irrevocably.
Yes, that. And what we know about Venom losing their souls and Xaden saying that Violet owns his soul, it feels like there might be some answers on Loisum that the plot is purposefully steering us away from and withholding for now. I definitely think we have not heard the last of Loisum, and I even wonder if we'll visit there. I'm also wondering if Papa Sorrengail's research on that isle holds a key piece of information about love and souls that can help Violet connect the dots to the cure. And Violet doesn't recognize it for what it is when she's reading it, but it'll dawn on her when she visits there, or another piece of the puzzle will come into play. And side note, I really do wonder what their trial involves. Perhaps they have to prove their love for someone.
Which, how freaking poetic would it be for her to have to go there and prove her love for someone after Xaden leaves? Not to harp on the mates thing, but if there is a situation where she finds out they are on mates level, or even, it might be a different word for humans, we don't know, I would see that happening on Loisum.
Also, does Loisum have magic? If it's closer to Zelna, since that was going to be their next stop, I kind of wonder if it does have magic. Although Hidota's had the least amount of magic, so distance is not really a good indicator.
I might go with yes, because I don't know, love is a magic in itself, you know.
I like to think so too.
Yeah.
Yes.
With no point in going to the other isles, I guess it's time to go home. So, court-martials for all! Not only are they returning after directly disobeying orders and with one less cadet, it's also with the worst news they could have possibly imagined returning with. They were counting on nullifying any repercussions with a, hey, look what we found, the Irids! Well, they found the Irids and failed in convincing them to come back to help. Luckily, King Tari will step in and make it so that they have no punishment, since he's so happy to have Riddick back in his life after being missing for like half a year, which does piss Atos off to no end.
And a lot of the fans. Yeah.
However, this is not to say nothing happens. The crew is interrogated endlessly and in two separate categories. The flyers are interrogated and they learn some very specific information, and the writers are interrogated and they don't learn that information. But we will cover that next episode. We have enough for this episode.
But you know how Xaden's eyes were temporarily red, revealing that he's a Venom? Yeah, that had some big consequences beyond the Irids now completely refusing to have anything to do with them. Riddick saw. During the scene, it was only Riddick, Violet, Garrick, and Xaden on this isle. So now Riddick knows that Xaden is Venom. He patiently, not so patiently, waited to get the full story from Violet after the others in their group began returning, like Mira and Arik, who still do not know that he is Venom. Or at least Mira definitely doesn't know. We can't be sure about Arik, who has precog. When Riddick and Violet finally venture far enough away and use the sound shield rune that Riddick carries, the whole truth tumbles out. And his response, quote, "I thought we agreed to tell each other the truth." Because yeah, Riddick is understandably pissed off that they are in a position of Violet withholding secrets from her closest friends and protectors again. And Violet is all too aware that Riddick was the slowest to forgive her the last time she did not let her friends in on what was actually going on. The trust these second-year squad mates have built is supposed to withstand anything. They trust each other with their lives, so they have to be able to trust each other with secrets too, so they know the whole picture of what they're fighting against together. And here, Riddick is so mad because Violet seems incapable of prioritizing her own safety. She's too preoccupied with keeping Xaden and his secret safe that she dismisses her own, which for her friend who is literally on this mission to watch her back and protect her is understandably infuriating.
I'm also going to give Violet a tiny, 10-point font lowercase l here. When she tells Riddick the full story, her only response to his, "I thought we agreed to tell each other the truth," was, "It wasn't my secret to tell." And she calls it a shitty apology. And Riddick's like, "That's not a apology at all." And I agree with him. Violet is so caught up in whatever she can do to save and cure Xaden. Really, telling her friends wasn't even on her radar. But she was also afraid that, he would be killed as a result. Remember last book, with the guilt of living buried in secrets weighed on her shoulders deeply. She hasn't felt an ounce of that this book because she's been so focused on cure, 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 to the point that we have not been quiet about, where she fully believes that Xaden won't turn fully because he won't keep pulling from the source, and therefore he'll stay at his current level of venonism.
I also wonder if this is foreshadowing because Violet has several more secrets from her friends. And correct, for instance, Xaden is an intrinsic. That is not her secret to share. I would argue that is one that I can defend her keeping that secret because it technically doesn't impact the others. I mean, you could say it does, but you all know what I mean. And then there's also the fact of her second signet and what it's going to be. And I could see that being a real dilemma for her, having to keep that secret from her friends. And she doesn't want to keep that. She shouldn't keep that secret. Or they start wondering about her second signet from Andarna, or she dreamwalks into a friend's dream and has to explain some stuff because she's able to snap out of it. And they're like, "What were you doing in my dream?" I don't know. I could see something along these lines and her getting in trouble again with her friends like this. And I kind of am worried about how many times they're going to forgive her, specifically Riddick here.
I am actually going to go on the opposite end of that spectrum and say that she's not going to keep that from them. She learned her lesson from Iron Flame about communicating with Xaden. I really hope, for character growth's sake, that she learns her lesson here about keeping things from Riddick and the rest of her squad, specifically the second years. I understand her not wanting to tell Kai or Evelyn and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about the core group.
Yeah,
here.
I'm talking about Sawyer, Rhee, Riddick, and Violet, those four. I think that she next book will tell them about her second signet pretty early.
I could definitely see that. I could see that. I actually hope that too. Because they're not going to turn her in.
No.
I mean, there is the whole foreshadowing back at the Six Talents in Shantara when they were like, well, at least no one's manifesting as an intrinsic. We don't want to have to kill them. And I do think that you're right. She is going to have to tell them. It's going to be really hard for her to have to share that. But I could see it being after she dreamwalks, and not like she has to explain something because I wouldn't fully understand what's going on. But there being a little bit of that extra nudge where it's she doesn't have Xaden around anymore. And we also can't forget that only one person can train her signet. And a lot of people do wonder if it's Dane.
Yeah, for sure. And also the foreshadowing about Riddick, where he's about to say, Dane hasn't earned the level of, I could lean away from the rules enough to know that super top secret information about Xaden being Venom. I think that he would keep Violet's secret of her being a Dreamwalker.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
We really see how this focus on cure over reality of the situation Violet's been living, because as she explains to Riddick that Xaden has channeled 3 times, actually it is 4 technically, but she didn't want to share about that time in her bedroom with the headboard, Riddick really starts to lose his shit. He compares Xaden to Theophany and Jack fucking Barlow, saying that Xaden sits on a throne in the Cenarium. He's the fucking Duke of Tyrandor, and he's bonded to one of the most vicious dragons who we all know that some Venom can control their dragons, which this could be foreshadowing if their bond is still in place, but I'm not going to talk about that right now because there's too much else. And I'm going to say this. Riddick's not wrong. Yes, he is focusing on this in a very, I'm going to call it black and white way. And I know Violet is horrified that this is all Riddick sees, but he is being practical. He doesn't have the emotional tie to Xaden that is absolutely giving Violet the rose-colored glasses. He's also looking at this as venom equals evil, full stop, which is good and bad in some ways. But Violet obviously does not see it that way. Xaden isn't evil. He's killed more Dark Wielders than anyone, and therefore he isn't loyal to them. Also, the reason he turned isn't because he wanted to go Venom and get more power. He did it to save the battle last book. And if he hadn't, they would not have had time to imbue the Wardstone and thus win the battle. And she's not entirely wrong either. Where Xaden is right now, emphasis on right now, he is like this. But again, that possibility of him progressing, Violet's not really seeing that as a possibility. While Riddick, and soon to be Xaden too, will see that progression as a foregone conclusion, which leads her to come face to face with this reality. This is why she has to find a cure. But as the Irids, her last hope, just told her, there is no cure. Everything Violet has done for the past 4 months has been in service of this goal. And no matter how much Riddick and the others want her to see it, she's not going to give up. Quote, I don't have all the answers, Riddick. I just know that I have to find them, whether they're in a forgotten book or some Dark Wielder's head, because I've lost Liam and now Traeger and my mother to this war, and I'm not giving up on the man I love. First, in some Dark Wielder's head. Literally, that is what Theophany teases with her in her note at the end of this chapter stretch. Secondly, I fully understand why Violet is so steadfast in this cure. She did lose Liam. She lost her mother. We sure bet she's lost her father in this war, but she doesn't know it yet. She doesn't want to lose the person who she is closest to, that she loves the most, if she has any control over it. Is it denial at times at how bad things are or how dangerous they could be? Yes, absolutely. She has to think about the best case scenarios and how Xaden hasn't ever tried to hurt her, because if she thought about how far he could go, she might not have the fight within her that she needs. And at the end of the day, if they lose Xaden to being a Venom, this war is over, because no one is capable of stopping him except her when he's at full power. But she would have to have enough training. And quite frankly, she won't stop him. Quote, I could no more hurt him than he could hurt me. But what about those others who know about Xaden's state?
The exclusive club of these people, including Garrick, Bodhi, Imogen, and Violet, they are all Xaden's people. In other words, as far as Riddick is concerned, they are looking out for Xaden's well-being first and foremost, which, kind of like Violet and soon enough Xaden will argue, isn't entirely true. Garrick is literally on this mission because it'll be up to him to stop Xaden if he goes out of control, because Violet won't have it in her to, say, kill him if needed. But the sentiment is the same. These are Xaden's people, who will always give him the benefit of the doubt, who are focused on finding a cure, who no matter what will find it difficult to look reality in the face about the situation. Someone who wholeheartedly has Violet's best interest as number one priority, full stop, needs to stand up for her and needs to help her stand up for herself. She needs someone close to her who she trusts outside of Xaden's circle to pull her out of denial and come to terms with the hard truth. And that's where Riddick comes in, and why he's so mad she hasn't trusted him yet. She didn't tell Riddick or others close to her because she was protecting Xaden, and in doing so, she was being reckless with her own safety. So Riddick makes her do something none of the others have forced her to do. Violet has to draw a line in the sand for when she will not be able to defend Xaden anymore. 1,000,000 points to Riddick for making Violet do this. As hard as it is for her to even have to think about boundaries, and as much as all of us love Xaden, sometimes it's not about whether you love someone, but they are too dangerous and you still have to let them go. Otherwise, if Violet can't draw a boundary, then they'll all lose her as well as Xaden. And Riddick is telling her here and now he will not let that happen. He will not put Xaden in front of Violet. And if she isn't willing to compromise with him on this and see that a boundary needs to be set, he's going straight to Mira with this information. Riddick and his emotional maturity, just wow. This is why I freaking love characters like him and Cassian from the ACOTAR series so much. They are jokesters and love to laugh and have fun, but they are still incredibly emotionally intelligent, loyal, and three-dimensional, and I love them so much. With the threat of telling Mira looming over her, Violet finally relents. Quote, fine, hypothetically, he would have to kill another rider without cause or hurt civilians. Hurt my friends, my dragons, hurt me. If he hurts me, then he's not him anymore. Good job, Violet. That's a good line to draw. Because so far, every time he has pulled from the source, like Nicole was saying, it has been to save others. It's how she distinguishes him from the other Venom. He's not like them because he sacrificed himself for the greater good and for her. So if/when that does go away, she'll have to face the truth that he is no longer a Venom on their side.
And also because this is a line that's so unfathomable for him to ever cross. So if she draws a line that she believes will never come to pass, she might not ever have to deal with this. Earlier, when they landed in Zelna, Xaden confronted her, making her promise that she will never step in when he's on the ice because he might hurt her when he's not him. And she doubles down saying, quote, "You won't hurt me. Even when you wanted to kill me last year, you never hurt me. Even when you lacked your emotions, you're still you." I would argue that she literally said in her inner monologue that he's not him because he looks like a stranger, but that's neither here nor there. Xaden knows that this is not out of the question because there were times when he is not himself. He's literally a stranger dressed up as the man she loves.
Well, and then he'll even say to Riddick, he'll correct Riddick and say when. Yeah. When I turn.
Yes.
Versus the if. He's like, I am not in denial of what is going to happen.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just going to say this once here and then probably a lot at the end of this deep dive. I absolutely think that this is what happened. I don't think he physically hurt her by any means, but I think he emotionally hurt her by channeling and turning more and telling her that he needs to leave. So because that was so painful and because it was the crossing of the line, that's one of the reasons she had Imogen wipe her memories. With a clear boundary line in place for Violet, the two second years start to head back to camp. That is until they come face to face with a blank-faced Xaden. Terms and conditions, round 2. Riddick will keep his silence if, and only if, Violet tells Rhee, Sawyer, and Jesinia. For the second time, go Riddick. Jesinia needs to know exactly what she is researching in case she comes across a way to slow progression. And while he knows Violet can handle herself, extra eyes on her from people who are fully committed to her safety first over Xaden's, especially when Violet's rose-colored glasses are a little too strong, it's not a bad idea. But it goes beyond Violet's sometime denial. We learned in Fourth Wing that if Violet dies, then Taryn dies, Sigale dies because mates cannot survive without the other, and then because a dragon without a rider is a tragedy, a rider without their dragon is dead, Sigale dies, Xaden would die as a result. This is all going off of we're going to ignore the fact that Xaden could most possibly survive if Sigale did die, because if their dragon dies and then they pull from the source enough to supplement that energy source, again, we're just going to ignore that right now. If Xaden progresses and others, maybe someone in leadership, learns about Xaden, he has to be killed. And killing Violet is the fastest way to kill Xaden through that chain I just mentioned. So Riddick, Sawyer, and Rhee will be there to protect Violet should that happen. Again, Riddick's got good points here. Violet's safety is going to be majorly threatened next book. So while Violet might be horrified and immediately want to shut down this idea, because the more people who know, the worse in her mind, who knows, after all, how they might react, and they might want to kill Xaden before he becomes too powerful, meaning her second squad might want to kill him, much like Mira will want to do when she learns. Xaden, however, does not blink an eye before agreeing to these terms, because Violet's safety is more important to him than people knowing. Wow, he's come so far since the you can tell no one days of Iron Flame.
After Riddick leaves, the truth of the mission failing because Xaden is Venom becomes abundantly clear. Most of the Irids may not have wanted anything to do with them, but they still had the attention of two before Xaden showed up. And this reality is hitting Xaden hard. If it was anyone besides him who walked up to all of them on the Isle, they could be taking Andarna to see the rest of her den. Or they may be flying back to Orisha and lighting the Wardstone to protect Xaden's people. Xaden has already known that being Venom would be a major problem for him being Duke of Tyrrendor and responsible for his province. But this is a whole other level of missing out on their biggest opportunity simply because of his presence, his existence as a Venom. And despite Violet's reassurance that the quick judgment that the Irids passed wasn't fair, and that this doesn't change a single thing about the way she loves him, Xaden needs to channel his inner Jon Snow and do some brooding. He feels tainted and needs some distance even from Violet, because so far he has been the most realistic about his condition mission as a Venin. And now he's more aware than ever of the damage simply existing and coming on the mission has been. They're going back to Bisgayeth without the Irids because of him. And for a problem solver like Xaden, that's a tough pill to swallow. Our sorrowful and defeated quest squad makes their way back to Bisgayeth, choosing a route that minimizes their chances of encountering Venin. And while Violet is on hyper alert for Venin and especially Theophany, because we can't forget she's still hunting Violet, they make it back to the wards without even running into a patrol of Wyvern. As we will soon find out, Theophany will have seen them fly over Pavis, but she's playing the long game and chooses to send Violet a note instead of attack them. For now
is doing a lot of work there. From this abandoned isle, it would be faster for them to fly northeast for 2 days straight, and then they'd hit the cliffs of Draelor. Well, some of the dragons could do that, only the larger ones like Terran, Sigale, and maybe Molvik. However, there's no way in hell the griffins would make it, so they return instead via isle hopping. All right, friends, get ready for our biggest travel math to date. First and foremost, this took me longer than I would like to admit to figure out the math to this. Remember, they are going back through the Isles. So from this uninhabited isle to Zelna, it is an 18-hour flight. Then from Zelna to Hedotus, it is about a 16-hour flight. Then from Hedotus to Umbriel, 13 hours. Umbriel to Deverelli is 10 hours. Whew, okay, that's part one. It's done. Then they fly from Deverelli to in between Corden and Drathis, which my math comes out to 24 hours in the saddle. Then from their in-between zone, they fly over Pavis to just outside the wards so that they don't get caught within the Varian borders and therefore can be court-martialed, which the path of least resistance has them around Resin, so just outside of Athbean. That's a 12-hour flight.
Would you get mad at me if I asked you to calculate the wind as well? Because there's like the whole headwinds and everything that they were complaining about. Sorry, I'm just now bothering you.
Because you know what? 13.1 miles per hour is slow enough. That is a school zone as far as I'm concerned. There is no way I'm making them go any slower than that, because or else I will be smited by Ternanok himself.
I just needed to ask about that.
So, Lexi, from Resin to Bisgayeth, it is roughly 11 hours. This puts their total flying time for 104 hours, going at 31.8 miles per hour. I will never forgive Rebecca Yarros for making it this slow. I'm so mad.
She'll be like, I had no idea that it was like that. Like, what did you do?
That is a total. This 104 hours going at 31.8 miles per hour is a total of 3,307.2 miles or 5,322.42 kilometers, or just short the distance from New York to London, which takes a standard aircraft about 7 hours and 12 minutes. But just to make the dragons feel better, it takes a ship 7 days to make it from New York to London, which is 168 hours. So congratulations, dragon. You're faster than a cruise ship in 2025.
3.5 weeks from the day they left, our beloved quest squad returns to Bisgayeth. But there's no sense of victory. They may have secured 40,000 troops for this army. However, it was at the cost of Traeger's death. And yes, they found the Irids, or rather the Irids found them, but they refused to help in any way. This overwhelming failure that Violet feels makes me just want to hug our gal. They, and Violet in particular, has already suffered immense loss, and this war feels like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, time and time again. Recall back to how they left for this mission. It was with a renewed sense of hope, and now that has been crushed, and it is felt among the whole group. They were dedicated to making a difference and were willing to risk disobeying direct orders to do so. But now, they have this fractured trust in themselves and their ability to make a difference and win this war. This mission we've been working toward all book has, for the most part, failed, which means it's time to come up with a new plan. Except new plans are running out as they keep hitting dead ends.
The complete douchebag Atos hands a missive to Violet, who balks at the sight of her handwriting. Her bestie, Theophany, is back. Damn, I missed her. Quote, Violet, I do hope you had a marvelous time on your journey. Though your riot looked a little haggard when you flew over Pavis, I do wonder why you went to so much effort when I have the one thing you seek above all else. Do enjoy your time you have with your friends until our next rendezvous. Don't worry, I'm making all the arrangements. I missed her. Oh,
Terrifying to get that. Like right after returning home. It's just like,
well, all that careful maneuvering on their way back, not encountering a single horde of wyvern, it wasn't because Zanal was with them. It was Theophany fucking with them. She was luring them into a sense of false safety, knowing that the real battle is about to happen in a few weeks, aka her arrangements. Yeah, this would be terrifying to read. Feeling like Theophany is all-knowing, always one step ahead of you. It does a really good job at unnerving our crew. But then we get the humdinger. Quote, I do wonder why you went to so much effort when I have the one thing you seek above all else. The more I think on this, I think you're right, Lex, from a few episodes ago. She might know the cure to Venonism, but she's fucking dead at the end of this book. I'm furious.
so this goes back to potentially the connection with Dune.
Yeah.
Dune and Loyal and the souls and changing of the souls and all of that. Now, we also have to wonder, is Theophany just saying that she has all of this with Violet because she knows that that would lure her in? Now, it has not worked and it will not work.
I could see Theophany lying, but I think it's just so much better storytelling if she's not and she died with the knowledge.
Yep,
And
I agree.
I also want to ask, why the fuck does Atos have a letter from Theophany? Like, this is suspicious, right? Right?
yeah, it is
Like,
a little
how does he just have? How does he have a text message just waiting for like? Why is he the middleman?
Theophany had it sent to Biscayeth, and he pretty much handles all of Violet's mail because he is Daddy Atos, and so he just naturally got a hold of it.
I
So
think there's
that's
more
possible.
to it than that. But
I know you think there's more to it, Nicole. To wrangle control of their return after disobeying orders and assert his authority again, Daddy Atos has news that he's just dragging out. Kat is one step closer to the Paromish throne. Well, shit. That means one of 3 possible people have died. And 2 of those people are her uncle Viscount Dakars and her beloved older sister Serena. And of course, GF Triple D knows that he is withholding information that holds Kat's entire existence in the balance. In other words, is her sister alive? Eventually, he shares that, yes, she's fine. Okay, well, what about her uncle? Oh yeah, he's fine too. But Queen Mariah is dead, and Seneva, where the queen resided in Pormiel, has fallen to the Dark Wielders. As Nicole said in Battle Brief, dun dun dun.
Which we will get to that next episode because we have to have something to talk about next episode.
As we wrap up this Signet Power segment of the episode, let's move to the power of precognition by turning our full attention to other important foreshadowing moments for the rest of this book, as well as more speculations for books 4 and 5. I'll kick it off here for us. The whole conversation about leadership between Xaden and Violet, how he insists she has to be better than him because there's only her. I'm curious, where does Bodhi fit in with all of this as Xaden's heir?
The school teacher voice Irid scoffs at how Violet, quote, feels a dagger is sufficient in hurting the Irids. Well, we will learn later with Berwyn that an alloy-hilted dagger can kill a dragon. But I wonder if it can kill an Irid or not. Alas, we do not know. Leothan mentions how there are hundreds of Irids. Are we ever gonna see them? I do think so, but are we going to see them because they all fly into battle on the continent? Or because we finally go to the den on their secret isle? Or both?
That's a good question. I'm going to say both, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of the female Irids says that firing the Orician Wardstone is not a mutual problem. However, as we know, Leothan will end up flying to Orisha to breathe on the Wardstone and activate the wards because this interaction and quick judgment won't sit right with him.
We get the line, quote, Mira's brows furrows when no one answers, and her gaze flickers between the 4 of us before settling on me with an intense once-over that ends with her studying my eyes. We know that she has been on watch for Violet potentially turning Venin, and I think the studying my eyes is her worried that Violet turned.
It's like the very first thing that she's checking every time she's away from her sister because she still has Grandmama Niara's words very much in her mind about how her sister Violet was not able to be fully dedicated because of the prophecy, so to speak, that she might turn Venin. So Mira is literally terrified that her sister is going to turn Venin at any time. Xaden says that Violet owns his soul, which we've referenced a whole lot and will continue to talk about. There's a lot of speculation that by him metaphorically giving his soul to Violet, it can circle back to helping find the cure for him. As Xaden turns more and more Venin, he loses more and more of his soul. So with Violet owning his soul, is she part of the cure to him getting his soul back and no longer being Venin? And how does this all relate to what the Irids were saying about how once when you lose your soul, it is dead. You cannot get it back.
Riddick wonders how long until Xaden can deny the call of his sage. Approximately 20 chapters is the answer, because by the end of this book, Xaden will be ASOM and no longer able to deny that call.
Continuing on with the Riddick conversation. I mean, honestly, this entire conversation is foreshadowing, but another line that really jumps out at me is when Violet says, quote, he'd have to kill another rider without cause or hurt civilians. At the end of this book, 4 riders and their dragons plus 3 elders will be dead. And there's a lot of speculation that Xaden is to blame for this. We don't know exactly what happened, but I think Xaden was maybe somehow involved. So I wonder if this part about without cause is a clue. Could Violet have convinced herself in the moment that he had cause? Basically, what happened in those 12 hours?
Oh, isn't that the question? We have donned our signet, so now let's tap into our mind of a scribe and examine the meaning of key epigraphs from this stretch of chapters. Starting with chapter 38, quote, to live amongst the Zelni, you must prepare to accept luck as your guide and chaos as your standard. This is from Zelna, Isle of Zanal by Major Asher Sorengale.
This is the third and final book that we know of out of Papa Sorengale's 6 tomes he left with Narelle. Based on his rank, this is also the last book of the 3 that he published. He first published his guide to Umbriel as second lieutenant soon after he graduated from Biscaeth and before he married Lilith. Then he published his guide on Hedotus when he was captain and recently married, though we can assume he was unmarried while actually on the Isle. Now with this guide to Zelna, we know he was a major when he published it, but I'm inclined to think he did most of his travels and gathering research before he and Lilith married, partly because of how Ferris called him Asher Daxton. If we look at Lilith's journal entries as epigraphs, one of them is, quote, Asher returned today. God's help us if anyone finds out. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive him for what he's done to her. This is from the journal of Captain Lilith Sorengale, which means Lilith was a captain when Violet was 2 years old and Papa Sorengale took her to Umbriel to be dedicated. I don't feel like he would gain higher rank a lot faster than her based on her rise to becoming general. So I think this guide to Zelna was published after Violet's partial dedication and after he was promoted to major.
Ooh, I love that. Chapter 41, quote, conscription rates are hereby doubled for each province until further notice. This is from Public Notice 634.23, transcribed by Percival Fitzgibbons.
First of all, I'm assuming Percival Fitzgibbons is Captain Fitzgibbons, who we know is a scribe at Biscaeth, and he's the one who reads the death roll for the Rider Squadron every morning.
I also think this, especially because this is Public Notice 634.23, and we know the first 3 numbers of any public notice denote the year, which it is currently 634 in our story.
Well, I do think that the numbers after the decimal point are probably just numerical with this is the 23rd public notice. Maybe the 3 represents the month because we know that this did come out in March, and 2, so it's like European dates. So it is showing March 2nd is when this public notice went out. This also gives us insight into what's been happening in Navarre while Quest Squad was away. It's a time of war. People are dying in battle, which means they need more bodies. I mean, more conscripts. Conscription is a draft, and now with double the number of conscripts, they'll get more 20-year-olds beginning their training to prepare for this active war.
Yeah, I'm going to assume we're going to see some major repercussions from this announcement next book, especially considering that later Xaden will mention how there's a lot of unrest in Tyrandor, and he will later deny this announcement and basically say, fuck you. In a missive to General Sorengale by Lieutenant Colonel Alyssa Trevant from Back and Forth Wing, Alyssa mentions how, quote, protests regarding conscription laws are growing within the province of Tyrandor. I mean, even though Xaden said fuck you to this, I think we're going to have some bad repercussions from this with unrest in other provinces next book. Chapter 42, quote, while the enemy's advance through Krovla makes it impossible to station a full riot at Suniva, we offer you 4 dragons and their riders. In the spirit of our alliance, you may expect a shipment of our most valuable resource, weaponry, to be used at your discretion. This is official correspondence from General Augustine Melgren to Queen Mariah, R.I.P.
We'll dive more into this attack on Suniva next episode when it's dissected in Battle Brief, because it's one of the only big things that happens in next week's episode.
The chair scene, excuse you.
Excuse me, you are correct. Chapter 49. But a few important things to note here. The Venin will preemptively be alerted to this large shipment of weapons, and it is why Suniva is the target. The Venin are after these alloy-hilted daggers and take them before they can be distributed to the rest of the kingdom. We can guess that Panchek is the one who passes this information to the Venin, but I'm just going to point out who this correspondence is from, General Melgren. Of course, Panchek would still be in the know, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't highlight that about Melgren, even though I'm personally convinced this was Panchek's doing, especially with Coda speaking through Melgren as we were talking about earlier. And the second thing of note, for now, from this epigraph is that 1 rider and 2 dragons will make it out alive, one of the 4 dragons and riders mentioned here to protect the queen.
And last but not least, Chapter 43, quote, if possible, hunt the enemy during the day. Their markings are easily hidden by the shadows of night, that it would not surprise me to find they walk among us. This is from Venin, a compendium, by Captain Drake Cordella, the Nightwing Drift. Again, more hints that they walk among us. But what's most interesting to me is the timing of this epigraph. Yes, this is when Riddick and Violet are talking, so of course, they walk among us, it's Xaden, yada yada. But this is also the chapter where they go back to Basgaeth. And who's one of the first people they see, other than Ree, who is not a Venin, I will die on that hill? They see Daddy fucking Atos. I absolutely think that this is foreshadowing for Daddy Atos being among the many who are walking among them. Now let us step into the archives, where each episode Lexi educates us all on a world-building topic to help us better understand this world and especially the magical dragons within it.
Today's archives topic is the Irids. Irid, short for iridescent, is the name of the previously unknown 7th den of dragons. They do not reside on the continent, aside from our beloved Andarna, and hundreds of them live on an isle unoccupied by humans. Irids are characterized by their ability to shift their scale color to completely blend into their surroundings, and they can choose which color they want to be, including like the resting color. In Andarna's case, she chose black, which appeared to offend the other Irids. This is probably because black dragons are known to be battle dragons, which goes against everything the Irids stand for. Their ability to shift colors like a chameleon gives them a major advantage in stealth because they can become seemingly invisible. Irids have also chosen not to pick a tail, like we've come to know other dragons on the continent do. Irids stay feathered tails, which makes sense because they are pacifists. They hold peace in the highest regard and do not want to be involved in war. The only exception is Andarna, whose egg was left behind as a test when the Irids abandoned the continent. A large majority of this test was for the humans, to measure their growth and ability to choose tranquility and harmony with all living things. The Irids had hoped that Andarna would return to the 7th den, informing them that the humans had evolved, that they had blossomed under the wardstones and no longer used magic as a weapon. But based on what they find out from Andarna and Violet, they do not believe society has learned their lesson. They believe that the signet bond between dragon and rider are used as a weaponization of magic. And since Violet and subsequently Andarna failed their test, Andarna is not worthy of being an Irid, which means she does not get entrance to their isle or instructions in their ways, stating she is an Irid in scale and name only. Of the 6 Irids we've met on the isle, they all rival Sogale in size. So not quite the size of Tern, the 2nd largest dragon on the continent, but far above the average dragon size. Turns out, Irids are just as arrogant as the other dragon dens, though they are rudely polite and will even apologize to another dragon. They do not bond with humans and choose not to live with them, believing that the signets that the dragons, quote, gave their riders are weapons and extremely dangerous, especially both of Violet's signets. Irids believe that if they do nothing to help the continent now, that the Venin will eventually starve from lack of magic and will either die off, allowing the land to regenerate, or the Venin will have to confront the abominations they've become and change. Speaking of magic, Irids don't just have magic, they are magic. According to Andarna, magic feels different when she changes colors, but we don't yet understand how this affects her abilities. We do learn from Andarna's experience that Irids are able to roast at least some Venin when she changes color, in this case to black. But since this has only happened once when Andarna roasted the Venin back in Iron Flame, we don't know any more details about this. Yet, hopefully, Irids are also able to communicate directly into a human's mind. This happens when a slide whistle sound goes off in the person's head, pitching from low to painfully high in less than a heartbeat. This slide whistle sound also triggers a Venon's eyes to shine bright red, which exposes them to whoever is around. Theophany calls Andarna, or more specifically the Irids, a prize. We can assume this is due to the sheer amount and type of magic they possess and why the Venon want one so badly. But again, that is just our assumption there. Talking about bonds for Irids, since Irids are magic, they can bend, shape, and even break bonds as they see fit. An example of this is shielding bonds between a rider and their own dragon. Violet makes the comparison that this feeling is oddly similar to the effects of the RSC serum. Only an Irid is able to become the second bonded dragon to a rider, as humans should only be capable of bonding to one single dragon. And if that rider has an active second bond like Violet, once the Irid breaks the bond, the rider can continue living because the other dragon will sustain their life. But it is still an extremely painful process, both physically and emotionally. In the process of severing the bond, there is a shrieking whistle sound followed by sudden silence. When reaching for the bond, it'll feel like being blocked by a wall before ultimately turning into nothing. During the war, the 7th Dragon Den helped light the Bisgaiath Wardstone, but left shortly afterward because they abhorred society's violent ways. When mentioning the wards, the Irids do say wardstones, plural, like we were discussing earlier. This could imply that at one point more than just the Bisgaiath Wardstone was lit, but we do not know that. Until Andarna, no Irid has been seen on the continent since the Great War. Only the Dragon Elders, including Coda of the Black Dragon Den, have known that Andarna is of the 7th dragon breed. It is that much of a secret among even the dragons. Irid dragon shells are hard metallic, and while the exact size is unknown, the chunks Violet had could hold a medium-sized dog. Its shades of color graduate from the darkest onyx on bottom to the brightest silvers on top, like the cover of this book, with each ring of hardened scales nestled within the next, yet never separate, creating a smooth outer layer with no ridges that only cracks when the hatchling is ready. To round out this archive segment on Irids, let's talk about the very few Irids that we know of. Andarna, of course, and then of the 6 Irids on the Isles, we only learn 2 names. Dason, who is one of the females, and then we have Leothin, or who, as I called for the longest time, Leonard. He is a distant relative of Andarna's from the same line because they have the same spiral patterns on their horns. And that, friends, is what we know so far about the Irids, which I'm sure this will definitely need a refresher, part 2, part 3, as we continue with the series.
Let's round out this episode with taking flight with our favorite moments. This is a small thing, but I love that Violet's Sunshield rune is still carrying power. But I also wonder if it's still holding power because she's connected to Irid magic or because she's the one channeling power into it unknowingly, like kind of how mage lights work, where it's like the excess burn off magic from people is how they are powered. Or because some of the runes have unlimited or much deeper power than others on the continent. I want to know more about this.
I never thought of it that way. I think it goes back to what the runes are tempered into, and maybe these quartz have more magic in them than, say, a piece of wood. But then Riddick does use a sound shield rune here too, but again, we don't know if that can be activated multiple times or if he's just been holding on to it for that one activation. We don't know yet.
Riddick mentions that they are the equivalent of the circus coming into town. When Lexi and I were getting ready for the midnight release party of Onyx Storm, we were listening to Rebecca Yarros' Onyx Storm playlist that she dropped the day or 2 days before the book released. And we were trying to guess what each song meant, and we were wildly off. But I remember so vividly, you were in the bathroom curling your hair. I think I was outside making tea or something. And Circus by Britney Spears came on, and we both dropped everything that we were doing and just looked at each other. And we were so confused. And then we read this section of the book and we were like, oh! I also find it so funny that the second Xaden and Sigale get their bond back, she just starts yelling at him over everything he's done wrong the past few weeks. This surprises me 0%.
Retweet. It was of course she did, of course. When Violet and Xaden get their bond back, they start their usual silent conversations in front of everyone else. And I love how Riddick is they're back to doing whatever it is that they do when they ignore everyone around them and pretend they're the only people in existence. This does bring up a question we've asked before on the podcast. Do other people know about their bond? I feel yes, but I can't remember if it's ever outright stated.
It's never outright stated. I'm assuming they've just put 2 and 2 together. But also, you'd think that they'd be so can you talk to him in your head or whatever? But they're just kind of accepting of it, I think.
Yeah, there was one point in Iron Flame when Kat was what are they doing? They're oh, they're silent arguing with each other.
Yeah.
But nobody ever mentions how it isn't like an actual bond.
I never knew I needed Garrick saying honey bear to Xaden, but what I would give for just an all Xaden and Garrick book. Like, if we ever get a full book from Xaden's POV where it's just all Sigale and Garrick, oh my God, I would be so happy. I have to highlight this because it is one of my favorite moments in the entire book, so I'm going beat by fucking beat through it. Eotrum sprints towards the water with his wings tucked in tight. Like, I just see this giant dragon, like, and then he stops about 10 feet from Riddick. He shoves his snout into the water, which creates a wave that goes up to Riddick's shins. But then Eotrum lifts his head and goes and sprays water through his teeth, completely soaking Riddick. And it turns out that Riddick and Eotrum have been playing a who can prank who game for who knows how long. I'm assuming, just in my headcanon, it's been since first year. Like, that has been canon throughout this entire book series. And it turns out that Riddick won the last round by getting itching powder and dousing it between Iotrum's scales during flight maneuvers. Like, that's kind of a dick move, I'm not gonna lie.
I also just love how Iotrum is 22 years old, too. So it's like, right? These two are just hilarious. I love them so
bros.
much. Yes.
They're such frat boys. I love it so much.
I love how the humans converse with each other so the Irids can't hear them by using sign language. It's such a smart workaround for them to be able to communicate openly with each other without the dragons knowing what they're saying. We didn't address this while analyzing the Irid conversation because it was just so dense, but it is absolutely worth calling out. I love how much Violet stands up for Andarna when our poor dragon is being shit on by her family she was so excited to see. Violet yells at them that she is not a whore, and Violet takes away the blame that was placed on Andarna. Violet's first priority here is making sure Andarna still feels loved and supported, as all of our hearts break for our favorite teenage dragon.
Rounding this part out, Riddick making things so awkward by telling Xaden, hey, you know that strike? It wasn't us, like, doing the deed. You know, the thing that normally makes her strike when she's with you? And Xaden's iconic retort, quote, well aware. First, because I trust Violet. And second, he glances at Riddick in a dismissive once-over. It wasn't a big enough strike. Oh my God!
We can always count on Riddick to add humor to these serious conversations. Like when Xaden insists to kill the guy he'll become, Riddick is like, is that noble? Is that twisted? I can't decide. You two have some serious issues. Is it bad that I feel like Xaden and Violet have one of the healthier relationships we've seen in fantasy? Like, what does that say about what I read? Thank you so much, friends, for listening to today's episode 8 of our Onyx Storm Deep Dive.
We will see you again next Monday for episode 9, where we are covering chapters 44 through 49. Chair scene! Yes, I will be going through it beat by beat. I'm so excited. Next book series we are covering is The Kindred's Curse Saga by Penn Cole. Get excited for next episode. It's the last sex scene we're going to have for a while on the show. Starting with book 1, Spark of the Everflame, in May 2025. Link is in the show notes to get the series.
We'd love to give the biggest warm welcome to our newest Iron Squad members.
Thank you so much for joining Simone S., Sam W., Ritu I., Amanda Lynn, Stephanie W., Manda D., Gina, Margaret, Stephanie S., Catherine J., and Erica S. Welcome.
Thank you for supporting the show as Iron Squad members. We appreciate you. And if you're like, hey, I want my name shouted out on the podcast and to be showered with all the love and attention too, please be sure to join the Fantasy Fan Club at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. The link is also in the show notes.
Thank you, as always, to our resident scribe curator, aka our content researcher, Brooke. She worked overtime this episode. And of course, our executive producer, aka our sanity manager, Hayden. We love you both.
We are very active on social media, so please be sure to follow us on Instagram and/or TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Also, while you're hitting buttons, don't forget to press that 5-star button and rate and review the show. Please don't just do this for the show. Please do it for any show, podcast that you listen to. It is so helpful for your favorite podcasters out there. And last but not least, do not forget to share this episode with your fellow Onyx Storm friends. Listen, if you spiraled about what the orange tabby symbolism could possibly be with that group chat of yours, I did all the work for you. So there you go. You can send this episode to that group chat.
Thank you so much. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wait, I wasn't ready. Okay, now I'm ready. No, I'm not. For both war and love, change souls irrevocably. For both war and love, change souls irrevocably. For both war and love, change souls irrevocably. Okay. Change souls irrevocably.